Hello, so like all the other what ifs, this isn't mine, it's a fanfic. The link is the description if you want to check it out. Anyways, let's get into it.
Hello?
Anime demigod.
Here?
Naruto put his hand on Shino's shoulder and they disappeared in a shunshin. They reappeared inside of a spare room in Naruto's lab. Shino took a moment and looked around. It was a simple room, no bigger than your average bedroom, with a table, 2 chairs, and 2 cups of tea waiting on the table. Shino's eyebrow rose in curiosity and Naruto answered his unasked question. I sent a clone to create the tea. Hope you don't mind, but I thought we could be comfortable whilst we talk. Naruto said as he motioned Shino to a seat. Shino nodded and sat down, followed by Naruto. Before we get down to the serious stuff, how's your hive doing? Naruto asked. Shino was slightly surprised but answered anyways, they grow steadily every day. I have 3 hives currently. 2 of the regular Kikaichu and 1 of the special bug that was created when it met you. Naruto smirked and Shino took that as a signal. Naruto-san, why is it that the companion that I sent with you for a week is now able to feed on yuki and consumes only a quarter of what my other companions eat? He asked, curious. Naruto chuckled, that leads into why you are here. But first, I must ask you. What do you think of me? Naruto asked seriously. Shino sat quiet for a moment before responding, I believe you have hidden much of your skills, especially after today's performance, and you are, more than likely, the strongest genin at this time. Your previous behavior was, apparently, a mask set to hide yourself from something. Perhaps the treatment you received by the villagers. Shino said. He noticed no reaction aside from the slight narrowing of Naruto's eyes but silently confirmed his observation. Overall, I find you to be a kind person with a penchant for pranks that could be a valuable ally and friend. Shino responded honestly. Naruto eyed Shino quietly. 5 minutes ticked by before Naruto replied to Shino's observation. I appreciate your honesty, and I would be honored to be your friend. Your observations are spot on and I must say that I am relieved to see that not everyone my age is blinded by their parents or their own preconceptions. One more question before I explain why I brought you here, if you would be so kind. Naruto asked. He received a nod from Shino before continuing, what do you think of the teams? He asked. Shino thought for a moment before answering, Team 7 would be an ideal assault and tracking team. Team 8 would be a good ambush and capture, or infiltration team. Our team is illogical. Ino-san is mismatched with our team. You, Naruto-san, and I would be a good tracking and assault as well. Given your capabilities, this team could possibly be an infiltration and retrieval team, but Ino-san would need heavy training and I would have to be trained specially as well, so it is illogical to assume that combination at this time. Ino-san has only her clan jutsu and her abilities do not suit our styles. Until we determine our affinities, I cannot logically comment on Yamato-sensei as I have not seen his abilities or his skills. Shino replied. Naruto nodded, I thought the same thing. Unfortunately, I know why this team was formed and, given your answers, I feel it prudent to answer your earlier question. Naruto said. At this, Shino seemed to lean a bit closer. The Kyuubi no Kitsune is a Biju and no human, no matter how powerful, can kill a Biju. However, a strong human can seal the Biju into a container. Naruto noticed Shino's eyebrows nearly disappear into his hair but continued on, the Yondaime Hokage did not kill the Kyuubi, as was told the younger generation, instead he sealed it inside a newborn child, because no Biju higher than Sanbai can be sealed into an inanimate object. He sealed it into me, Shino-san. Naruto said as he stared directly into Shino's eyes, air goggles. Shino was silent for a moment. Why would we be told he killed it then? He asked. Naruto sighed, you have noticed my treatment amongst the villagers. Imagine if the younger generation believed the same as the older. That I was the fox reincarnated? I would be dead, not that they haven't tried it already. Naruto answered. This answers your earlier question. Your Kikaichu can feed on yuki because my chakra contains a low amount of yuki. I steadily fed it enough, in a small amount, that it mutated and can consume yuki. I hope you find it useful. Naruto answered. Shino furrowed his eyebrows. Why would you give me a weapon against yourself? Why would you give a potential enemy a weapon to kill you? Shino asked as he remembered the trust issues Naruto had. Naruto was silent for a moment before responding, I believe you are the best person to stop me should the need arise. You hold no prejudice for me being the container, as you yourself hold Kikaicha. You are taught to think logically before acting. You would also factor in that I allowed you to have these companions and act accordingly. Simply put, Shino-san, I have watched many of our classmates, and other ninja that protected me when I was younger, and believe that you are the best suited to control me, should the need arise. Naruto replied. Shino silently went over Naruto's reasons before bowing his head. I am deeply honored to know that you would trust me so easily, Naruto-san. He said. Naruto sighed, I don't trust you completely, Shino-san, but I do believe in your decisions regarding my tenant. Naruto answered, getting a nod of agreement from Shino. Now, this team has a Mokuton user, which the first is rumored to have been able to control a Biju with his abilities. A Yamanaka who could tell if I was thinking of leaving or being disloyal to the village, even if it's subconsciously. And, you, who can eat my chakra and my yuki. This team was made solely to control me, and I find it extremely hard to work with them, let alone trust them, when their job is to keep me in line. Naruto said, answering the question of why he didn't trust his team. Shino nodded, it is logical, considering your situation. However, I understand what you mean. I appreciate you telling me all of this, Naruto-san. Shino said as he noticed the time. Naruto nodded, it is fine, please don't tell anyone that I know. I have one last thing I need to take care of before all of this comes out. Naruto said as he thought of the seal that was still being displayed on his back via his stasis seals. Shino nodded and replied, I shall honor your wish, Naruto-san. I hope you can come to trust me more. He bowed as Naruto put his hand on his shoulder. Naruto smiled softly, we shall see, Shino-san. He replied as he shunshined the two back to the training field before they parted ways. Naruto to his shithole apartment and Shino to his complex. Naruto walked silently back to his apartment as he thought back on his meeting with Shino. Suddenly, he remembered making the tea and setting the table for the meeting. Wait a second. I didn't do that. That was my clone. So I get the memories of my clones. Why didn't I notice this before? He thought. He shrugged a minute later and chuckled, oh well, I'll just have to use this later. He walked up to his door and channeled chakra into the seal he had woven into the doorknob. It unlocked with a soft click and he stepped inside. He made his way to his room as he heard the door lock behind him and the seal glow around the room before fading. He stepped inside and smirked, seeing a sleeping Anko in his bed. She's so clingy. He thought before quickly stepping to his underwear, hopping into bed, and snuggling with his girl. But whoever said I didn't like it? Naruto thought as Anko's arms wrapped around him and pulled him flush against her body. He chuckled softly before falling asleep. Same night, a Barame compound. Shino walked into the compound at 8 p.m. He hadn't had dinner and walked straight to the kitchen so he could find something to eat. He walked in and was surprised to find his father sitting at the table with a cup of tea. Shivi was a good 5 feet 10 inches with a long black trench coat covering his body and the trademark goggles all a Barame wore. He looked up to see Shino walked in and allowed his son to make his dinner and sit before beginning his conversation. You are late, Sachi. That is unlike you. May I inquire as to your whereabouts? Shivi asked. I was with one of my teammates, Tou-san. Shino replied before he bit into the sandwich he had made. Shivi sat silently before replied, I see. Would it, perhaps, be Uzumaki-san that you were with? Shino nodded. Yes, Tou-san. He answered my question as to my new hive. It was, most informative. He said. Shivi's eyebrows rose. What did he tell you? He asked curiously. Shino put down his sandwich and looked at his father. I am afraid that I have promised Naruto-san not to reveal his secrets until he chooses to do so himself. Suffice it to say that he chose to give me my hive and that it was not an accident. Please refrain from informing anyone of your suspicions, for I believe that Naruto-san has earned his privacy. Shino replied seriously. Shivi stared at his son for a moment before nodding. I will do as you ask, Sachi. However, if things get out of hand, I will have to inform the Hokage. He said. Shino nodded in agreement. I understand, Tou-san. I will simply have to ensure that things do not get out of hand. Shino said. Shivi smiled behind his trench coat and stood. I will leave that task to you then, Sachi. Good night. He said before leaving the room. Shino bowed his head in respect and replied, thank you, Tou-san. Good night. Time skip, 1 week, Naruto's lab. The last week had gone rather well. Yamato had taught them tree walking and they had all got it down in 3 days. Naruto already had it mastered but made it look like he was working on it. He didn't want anyone to know his true strength until he removed that bloody seal from his back. Ino was, surprisingly, only a fangirl because she thought it would help Sakura to have a rival. That plan backfired and Ino was now working hard to gain some real kunoichi skills. She didn't seem to pay much attention to Naruto but had commented that her dad often asked about her team. Yamato was pleasantly civil to Naruto, much to his surprise. He taught all of the genin equally and actually seemed to enjoy it. He had shown a few of his Mokuton jutsus, like his Moku Bunshin and his Mokuton, Mokujoki, wood release, wood locking wall, which had seemed pretty useful in a fight. He did seem to watch Naruto the most, but he knew that Old Man Hokage had ordered it, along with severe political threats, so as to ensure that Naruto wasn't under Hikari's influence. It still made him laugh when he thought about their irrational fear of a woman that loved him. Shino was coming to be Naruto's best friend and they could often be seen working together during their D-rank missions. Shivi and Shino had both kept their word and had not informed anyone of Naruto's secret, not that Shivi knew much, and Naruto was happy to see he could trust someone with his secrets after so long. He really didn't like hiding everything but it was necessary for now. Currently, Naruto was working on the seal that was on his back. He had made liberal use of Kage Bunshin and had several teams studying the separate parts of the seal. He himself was looking at the loyalty seal and couldn't decide between praising the man who made this, or throwing him into the deepest pits of hell. He was leaning toward the latter. Either this guy was a seal master of the highest caliber and is hiding seals that I can't see, or he just didn't give a rat's ass about the target of this seal. If I even try to remove this thing, there's a good chance I'll fry my brain. Naruto said in frustration. Suddenly he found his head in between two fleshy globes and a sweet lilting voice flowing into his ears. Calm yourself Naruto-kun, a woman said. Naruto took a deep breath and smiled softly. Good. Now. Guess whole hoo. She said smirking behind him as she wrapped her arms around his neck and pulled him closer. Naruto chuckled, I'm gonna guise. Hikari-chan. He said childishly. Hikari laughed as she stepped back and twirled when he spun around in his chair. She winked at him and giggled, good guess. How did you know? She asked mock pouting. Naruto simply smiled, Anko-chan is on a mission for this week so it had to be you. Besides, you were due back about 3 days ago. He replied as he gave her a look that said, start explain. Hikari chuckled nervously and said, sorry about that. She turned to the hallway, oi. Ami-chan. Get in here. She yelled into the hallway. Naruto's sweat dropped as a woman stepped into the room. She had long silvery white hair that reached her rump. Bright electric blue eyes and a body most women would kill for. She was a good DD breast size, like Hikari. Her waist was slim but her ass was large and plump, perfect for fucking, not that Naruto thought that, yet. Her legs were slender but obviously held muscle by the way she walked. She had on a light blue yukata with simple sandals and she smiled warmly at Naruto. Hello Naruto-san, it is good to meet you. She said formally. Naruto sat silently before turning and glaring at Hikari. Who said you could bring someone here? He asked, angry that one of the only people he trusted just willingly gave away his hideaway. Hikari visibly shrank back. Ami-chan has been my friend for centuries Naruto-kun. Besides, she's only here because you have an interest in Oropedo. She said, saddened by his anger. Naruto sighed and looked back at the woman. I apologize for being so rude but I have trouble trusting people and I don't know you one bit. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. May I ask what your is? I assume it's not Ami-chan. Naruto said with a slight smirk. The woman had a tick on her forehead for being called that but sighed and nodded, my name is Amaterasu. Naruto looked at her curiously until she rolled her eyes and smiled, yes I am the goddess of the sun. I know you may be skeptical but consider who I came with. She said. Naruto looked over at Hikari, who was still rather sad that Naruto had gotten upset with her, and then chuckled, good point. Amaterasu-sama, may I inquire as to your reason for being here? Hikari-chan said you were here because of Oropedo but, why? He asked curiously. Amaterasu sighed and motioned to the table. Naruto nodded and the human, demon and god sat down. Naruto sent a Kage Bunshin to get some tea and Amaterasu spoke, Orochimaru is actually the reincarnation of the 8-headed snake Yamada no Orokai. He seeks to regain his immortality and tear down the Kamis realms. Unfortunately, Camus cannot directly interfere in mortals' affairs until a sure threat has been recognized. As it is, he holds only a bastardized version of immortality and nowhere near enough power to tear down the heavens. However, every kami is allowed certain privileges. He holds the kusanagi, which is actually my blade. I am allowed, by kami law, to retrieve it from him," she said. Naruto nodded in acknowledgement. Hikari had briefed him on several celestial and demonic disputes in case they ever affected him through her. Naruto's clone had returned and set down 3 sets of tea for the people. Naruto noted that Hikari still looked set inside. He leaned over and tapped her shoulder. She turned and found herself on the receiving end of a rather heated kiss. They broke apart slightly flushed and breathing hard. Naruto smirked, "Next time just tell me you're bringing friends over. And quit being sad, it just doesn't suit you," Naruto said. Hikari smiled and nodded as a blushing Amaterasu cleared her throat. The 2 future mates blushed and Amaterasu chuckled, "Good to see you two so happy. In any case, I need assistance in finding and fighting Orochimaru, so I was wondering if we could join forces, so to speak. I know you want to hunt him down for what he did to Anko-san. What do you say?" she asked. Naruto looked to Hikari, who nodded. "I think this would be a mutually beneficial thing, so yes. Your assistance would be most helpful," Naruto said as they shook hands. "I would like to inform you that there's no way I can fight Orochimaru at my current level." Amaterasu nodded, "I know that, but we have time to fix it, besides we need to find him first. I have a feeling that he will come after this village because it stands for everything he hates and it's the place that denied him power as Hokage," she said. Hikari nodded in agreement, "Right, he's awfully conceited that way." She turned to Naruto, "We should up your training and try to find out how to do elemental manipulation." Naruto nodded, "That's a good idea. However, this seal I'm working on comes first," he said. The 2 females looked at him curiously until he sighed and explained the seal to them. Needless to say, they were both pissed. Hikari was even a little mad at herself for not noticing it. Amaterasu was livid that they could so callously treat another human this way. Naruto shook his head when they both commented on destroying something. "We mustn't stoop to their level, girls. I will prove them wrong about me, but, even if I can't, I'll still protect those precious to me and say damn those who believe me to be a demon," Naruto said. Hikari and Amaterasu smiled. "Now let's get to work on this seal. Amaterasu, if you have any knowledge, it'd be much appreciated. If not, then please make yourself at home," Naruto said. Luckily, Amaterasu had some knowledge in seals and another view was always welcome. Time skip, 3 days, girls' night out. Anko had returned from her mission yesterday and had met the new female now residing at Naruto's hideaway. Naruto had given her 3 special seal tags that she had asked for and she patted her trench coat pocket happily. It had taken him most of the week to supply the chakra to them, but he was happy to help her out. He had also told her that she could reveal her curse mark removal, but to keep just who did it until he removed that pesky seal from his back. Anko smiled seeing the girls all sitting at a corner table and promptly ran over and joined them, discreetly slipping a genjutsu and sound disruption seal onto the booth. Naruto really is useful with those things, she thought happily as she took her seat next to Kurane. "Hello girls," she said cheerily. Hana smiled at her. "Hey Anko. How's it going?" she asked. Anko smiled brightly. "Great, why do ya ask?" she replied. Hana shrugged. "You just seem happier than usual," she said. Anko chuckled. "There's a reason for that, but first, what were you girls talking about?" she asked. Yojao sighed. "Those anti-rape seals that have been going around recently. We can't seem to get our hands on some," she said sadly. Kurane nodded. "They only seem to sell them to the kunoichi who are sent specifically into seduction. That's not even mentioning the price," she said. Anko nodded her head as well but thought, "Well, of course. Naruto-kun made sure that those girls got them first so that they could protect themselves. After all, it was child's play for him to get the list of girls from the administration building. Talk about low security, although, he can hide from Umbu." Hana shook her head. "I just wish we could get each a one. You never know when they could come in handy," she added. Meanwhile, Higurashi shop. Naruto performed his version of the henge, the actual transformation because he pours enough chakra into it, and walked inside. He was a tall man at 6 feet 8 inches with a long black trench coat, sunglasses, a face mask, and a hat. He tipped his hat to Tenten, who nodded and made his way to the back. He smiled seeing Hiroshi working the forge. Hiroshi looked up and smiled at one of his best sources of income. Tatsumaki-san. It's good to see you. Those anti-rape seals are genius. They sell extremely well. He said smiling. Tatsumaki raised an eyebrow. How much have you been selling them for? He asked. Hiroshi smiled. You sold them to me for $50, but the demand was so big after the first batch that they have been going for about $200 to $300 per seal. We are making a huge profit. He said happily. I don't know the Ryu conversion, so sorry guys. If someone could help me out, I'd be grateful. Now Hiroshi was no bad guy, but he was a businessman and Naruto understood that. However, these seals were special. They were for preventing something that Naruto utterly despised, and he was not happy with the price of his invention. Tatsumaki glared at Hiroshi through his glasses. Hiroshi visibly shrank because if he lost this resource he would lose a very large portion of his business. You mean to tell me that my anti-rape seal is becoming inaccessible to the very people that it was made to protect? He asked angrily. Hiroshi frowned. Most can still afford it, but your demands have been met. All of the girls in seduction and infiltration have received at least 2, at discounted prices. I just didn't think that the price would be driven so high. He replied. Hiroshi may have been a large man, and a retired shinin, but he knew that seals masters were very rare and very powerful. Tatsumaki sighed. Very well. Drop the price to $75 to $100 per. You still turn a profit and it becomes affordable to all kunoichi, aside from genin, because they have no real need for it. If they do, well, they will have to save. It takes too much time and energy to make them for any less, he said, and Hiroshi nodded. Tatsumaki smiled behind his mask. Now, I have something you may be interested in. Hiroshi's eyes sparkled. Whenever Tatsumaki showed him something new, he was always assured something interesting. I know your daughter is a weapons mistress. Well, imagine if she could put a seal on her enemy that gave him a magnetic charge. He said. Hiroshi smiled brightly and the gleam in his eye brightened as Tatsumaki pulled out a tag and stuck it on a nearby wall. Kai, he said as he focused chakra to it. Immediately, all the tools big enough to fly flew straight into the wall. Hiroshi's smile threatened to split his face. This way, even if the person dodges, they will probably get hit because of the magnetic field. What do you think? Tatsumaki asked. Hiroshi turned to Tatsumaki with dollar signs in his eyes. How much and where do I sign? He asked, earning a chuckle from his partner. Back with the girls. Anko's hand reached into her pocket and pulled out 3 tags before slapping them in front of her friends. Kurane picked one up and her jaw dropped. How did you get these? She asked, surprised. The other girls picked up their tags and surprise adorned their faces as well. Anko shrugged with a soft smile on her face. I know the guy who makes them. I'm afraid I can't tell you who yet, but I should be able to tell you in about a month if my guess is correct. She said. Hannah stared at her incredulously. How do you know this guy? He's gotta be a seal master to make something so complex. She said. Anko's smile widened slightly and she pulled down her collar to show her curse mark, or rather her lack of curse mark. It's the same guy that removed this thing from me. The same guy that saved me from being raped. So you can understand why I'm not going to tell you. She said softly. What? Rang out across the table as the 3 girls sat stunned at what was just told to them. Anko, if what you say is true, then why doesn't he showcase his skills? He'd be heralded as a seals master. Kurane said, shocked. Anko shook her head. I can't say. All I will say is that he will come out eventually, but he refuses to do so now because he would be in danger. She said. Hannah nodded. All right. I say we drop this matter until Anko tells us, because I don't want to lose her friendship or her trust. She stated. Anko looked at Hannah and smiled. Thanks, Hannah-chan. Hannah simply nodded back and the girls agreed to keep it quiet until Anko told them otherwise. They spent the rest of the day in the spa, simply enjoying themselves. Anko waved goodbye to her friends as she made her way back to the hideout. Time warp, after Naruto left the Higurashi shop. Naruto had removed the henge, but bought some sunglasses that seemed to complete his look. He made his way back to his lab, after making sure no one was following him, and entered to find the groups of clones working with Hikari and Amaterasu to try and unravel the seal in a way so as to not destroy his brain. He sighed as he sat down at his desk and looked at the seal again. He'd been working on it nearly non-stop and he was honestly tired of it. Hikari stopped helping the clones and walked over to Naruto. She draped herself over the chair and wrapped her arms around him. "What's wrong, Naruto?" she asked. Naruto leaned back into her embrace and replied, "I'm just tired of this seal." Hikari frowned. "Then why don't you let your clones handle it and work on something else? It's not like the seal is going anywhere," she said. Naruto sighed. "You're right, I just don't like the idea of anyone being able to control me like this," Naruto told her. Hikari nodded. "I understand, but it seems that the seal also transmits a chakra signal to the user, probably Danzo. You could place a suppression seal on it but he may notice it," she said. Naruto slumped in his chair before sighing again. "You're right. I'll wait till I'm closer to unraveling this before I suppress it. I'll try and unlock that last seal on my arm instead," he said. Hikari smiled and turned Naruto's head to kiss him lightly. "Good idea, maybe we can figure out who that man is now," she said. Naruto nodded and got to work. Hikari smiled seeing Naruto focus fully again, without distractions, and went back to helping the clones. Amaterasu was watching and smiled seeing her longtime friend have such a good relationship with someone like Naruto. Hikari had told her almost everything she could about Naruto. Hikari knew that it was safe to do so simply because Camus did not interfere in the mortal realm, so she wouldn't give out anything. Besides, being friends for centuries helps too. Naruto spent the next 3 hours slowly applying chakra to the complex seal on his arm, trying to find the unlocking mechanism inside the array. He slowly pushed chakra through the various lines of the seal, searching for dead ends, traps, and false releases. It was much like a grid that had pieces and sections that were nothing but traps. Anko walked in just as a poof of smoke surrounded Naruto's arm and he yelled, "Eureka! I got it!" He looked up and smiled at the women, and clones, in the room, looking every bit the 12-year-old he was. The girls all smiled and Naruto turned back to the leather-bound research journal with a note taped onto the front. Naruto looked at it curiously until he picked it up and started to read. The girls came and quietly read it over his shoulder. "Dear Naruto, I'm sorry. I know I said that earlier, but I feel the need to say it again. If you have reached this level, then know that I am proud to call you my son and my successor. In this journal are all my notes on the 2 jutsus that made me both famous and infamous in the Third Shinobi War. The Raise Non, and the Hiraishin, Flying Thunder God. Both are formidable justice and I hope you use them wisely. One last thing before I go, I love you, son, and I hope that you and your mother still love me as well." Naruto sat silent for a moment as the eyes bugged out of Anko's head. Suddenly, he started laughing hysterically. The girls all looked at him as he held the note. He turned towards Hikari, who was on his left, and crushed the note to his chest. Tears were streaming down his eyes. He slowly stopped laughing and started sobbing. The 3 girls quickly pulled him into a hug and Hikari whispered quiet comforts to her container. Nearly 10 minutes later, Naruto had stopped crying and was wiping the tears from her face. The girls let him go and he put the note back onto the journal. He stared quietly at it for a second before he turned his gaze to the girls. They were all quietly amazed at his sight. This was not the boy they had just comforted as he found his father's notes. This was the man that would master these jutsu and bring the world to its knees should they stand in his way. The 4th son, huh? Well, Naruto-kun, I can't say I'm surprised. You are carbon copy of him and you're a master of seals, Anko said with a smirk. Amaterasu and Hikari's eyebrows both disappeared into their hairlines. "So, what you gonna do, Naruto-kun? With these jutsu, you could leave Konoha and go pretty much anywhere with assured backing from the hidden village you choose," she said. Naruto shook his head. "No way. My Dio-san gave his life for this village. Not the people in the village but the will of fire that he believed in. I believe that, and I will make these people honor his sacrifice, if I have to. Get ready, Konoha, because the Kurosenko, Yellow Flash, will rise again," Naruto said with conviction. He immediately sat down and began to study the notes for the Raise Non. The girls all smiled and Anko began to help him understand shape manipulation while the 2 immortals went back to helping the clones. Time skip, 2 weeks. Naruto stood in the forest of death smirking. He focused chakra to the palm of his right hand as his left spun over it. He dashed forward at umbu speeds and slammed his palm into a large boulder while yelling, "Raise Non." The boulder shattered into pieces as Naruto retracted his hand and noticed the damage. He smiled. It had taken him a week to learn the jutsu using his clones as a support to make it. Another week to make it with only his hands and in a 5-second interval. Now he needed to work on making it with one hand and making it in under 2 seconds. Anko whistled in appreciation as she noticed the craters from the various raisins that Naruto had made. "Nice work, Naruto-koi," she said loudly as she landed in the clearing. Naruto turned to her and smiled brightly. "Thanks, Hebiheim," he replied. Anko felt her face heat up slightly but smirked anyway and said, "If you don't head back now, you're going to miss your team meeting," she told him. Naruto looked at the sun and yelped as he dashed off into the forest yelling, "I'm gonna be late." Anko chuckled and shunshined to her apartment. She had just gotten back from a mission and was dead tired. Naruto hopped out of the trees and into the clearing that was training ground 10. He landed just in time to meet with his team without any complaints. Naruto scratched the back of his head and chuckled. "Sorry guys," he said as they all turned to him. Yamato simply smiled. "It's fine, Naruto. You aren't late, but we have to hurry to get our mission for today," he said as he walked towards town and the Hokage office. The genin quickly followed their sensei and the group was soon standing in front of the Hokage. Yamato stepped forward and said, "Team 10 reporting for their D-rank mission, Hokage-sama." Sarutobi smiled warmly. Team 10. We only have one mission left for today and that's to paint Mrs. Hakurisega's fence. Will you accept this mission?" he asked. Yamato nodded. "Yes, Hokage-sama," he replied as he took the scroll. He turned to his team and said, "Team 10 proceed to Mrs. Hakurisega's house and wait for me there. I have to speak with the Hokage about one of my previous assignments." His team nodded and walked out of the office although Naruto eyed him warily. Sarutobi looked at Yamato and activated a silencing seal. "Report," he said. Yamato nodded. "Nothing new, sir. He still doesn't trust me or Ino, although he does seem to have a friendship with Shino. He doesn't appear to have any friends inside the village aside from the ramen stand people, Shino, and you, sir. The villagers still treat him like the plague even when he's with his team. I can honestly say that if he decided to leave, there isn't much stopping him," he said. Sarutobi sighed. "Thank you. Tell me though, do you believe him to be a threat to Konoha?" he asked seriously. Yamato stood silent for a moment before answering. "I do not believe he would attack Konoha outright, sir," he said stoically. Sarutobi nodded. "Very well, continue your observation," he said as he dismissed the sound seal and his ninja. Yamato shunshined to his team as the Sandaime picked up his tobacco pipe. "Please, Naruto. I have made many decisions for the greater good. I don't want to order your death. I don't want to make another mistake," he thought to himself as he resumed his work. Hakurisega's house, 9 a.m. Team 10 arrived at their destination and walked up to the door. Mrs. Hakurisega was a pleasantly plump old lady with several cats and a picket fence around her yard. She had several cans of white paint and brushes for the genin to use. When she saw Naruto, she sneered. However, she turned to Ino and Shino and said, "Why don't you two start on the work? I'll bring you a nice cup of lemonade out soon," she said sweetly. Ino quickly set to work, whilst Shino seemed to hesitate before Naruto nudged him quietly. Yamato shunshined to the location just as Mrs. Hakurisega turned to Naruto with a sneer on her face. "You, little demon, are to work on the other side of the fences. I can't have you corrupting those poor children more than you have," she said as she thrust a brush and some paint into his hands. This was the scene that Yamato shunshined into. He frowned when she waved cheerily to him and noticed that Naruto did as she said, but his hands were gripping the paint and the brush rather tightly. "Hello. I'm happy to see such bright and energetic faces working on my fence," she said to him. He nodded and she proceeded to ramble on about the two who were working, before she walked inside to make some lemonade as she promised. Yamato was about to walk over to Naruto when Ino stopped painting next to him. "Yamato-sensei? Why does everyone treat Naruto so badly? His pranks weren't that bad," she said. She still hadn't caught on to her Ryo-san's gentle proddings about Naruto. Yamato sighed. "All I can say is that they see him as something he's not for reasons out of his control. Don't dig too deep, you may not like what you find," he said seriously as Mrs. Hakurisega came out with 4 glasses of lemonade. She swiftly handed them out to the genin and their sensei before heading over to Naruto with the last one. She picked it up and drank it in front of him before heading back inside to do the dishes. She spent most of the morning torturing Naruto and Yamato grew sick of it. He tried to speak up but Naruto always seemed to comment about something else. He wondered about that as the mission came to a close and Mrs. Hakurisega handed out the mission payment but refused to pay Naruto. "You didn't work at all?" she said to him as she turned her back and started into the house. Yamato opened his mouth but Naruto simply chuckled and covered his sensei's mouth before the door slammed in their faces. Yamato turned and glared at Naruto saying, "Naruto, I don't know why you kept me from saying something but you better have a good reason for stopping me from berating a civilian who was harassing a ninja," he said seriously. Naruto stared at him for a moment before he put his hands in his pockets and headed towards the Hokage Tower. He shrugged and said, "It won't change her mind, so why bother? It'll take more than idle threats to make them realize they're wrong." Yamato closed his mouth and the team started to follow Naruto. They still had to turn in the mission report anyways. They walked into the Hokage office and Sarutobi smiled at them. "Ah, Team 10. Glad to see you back," he said. Naruto stepped forward and said, "GG, I request 2C rank lightning jutsu in reparation for my non-payment at the hands of one Mrs. Hakurisega." The people in the room stood shocked. Sarutobi cleared his throat. "I'm afraid that's not possible, Naruto. If she refused to pay you," he said before Naruto interrupted him as he walked over to the bookshelf and pulled out the book on Konoha Charter. Naruto flipped through the pages and read aloud, "If any ninja is denied payment by a civilian of Konoha, that ninja is allowed reparation in the form of nin, gen, tai, iryo, or funjutsu scrolls from the Noha vault. 1D rank is equal to 2C rank, 1C rank is equal to 1B rank and 1C rank, 1B rank is equal to 1A rank and 1B rank, 1A rank is equal to 2A rank, 1S rank is equal to 1S rank," Naruto stated. The people on his team stood silently as Sarutobi eyed his surrogate grandson. Eventually, he sighed, "Very well. I will also be adding Mrs. Hakurisega to the blacklist." "I am sorry, Naruto," he said. Naruto shrugged, "I got a good deal out of it in my opinion. However, I will no longer take this abuse sitting down, Aji-san. Your methods have not worked, so I will resort to my own if it becomes necessary," he said seriously. Sarutobi took a hit of his pipe and nodded sadly. "Good, thanks Aji-san. I'll take those scrolls when I come in tomorrow. Jane," he said as he shunshined away. The room was quiet until Shino spoke. "Well, that was a well thought out reaction. Well done, Naruto-san," he said before returning to his compound. The other three occupants of the room just silently went their separate ways, except the Sandaime, who was hoping Naruto wouldn't go overboard. Time skip, 2 weeks, 4 weeks since discovery of seal. Naruto sat in his lab smiling. He had just cracked the seal that, he was now sure, Danzo had placed on him. The seal obviously didn't take into account the applicant's body or mind when used, and it was just too inhumane for the fabled Sandaime to use. Danzo was another matter entirely. He nodded as Hikari and Amaterasu congratulated him and helped him set up the sealing tags to destroy the seal and allow it to be seen. He got up and got dressed in his usual attire. He turned to Amaterasu and said, "If myself or Hikari doesn't return in a day, destroy this place and leave. I don't want you to be hurt, all right?" Amaterasu nodded, "Very well, just don't get hurt, yeah, hear me?" she said with a smirk. Naruto smirked back, yeah, geez, you get more and more like Hikari every day," he said. "Yoch!" he yelled as Hikari smacked him upside the head. "What was that?" she asked. Naruto chuckled, Nothing. Now will you go back to the seal? We have a grandpa to visit," Naruto said. Hikari nodded and disappeared. Amaterasu kissed him on the cheek, for good luck, and giggled as he disappeared into the air. It was gonna be one hell of a day. In a secret cave below Konoha, an old man with bandages over half his face and his right arm sat in his secret base, waiting for his root member to return with the information he ordered. He frowned as he thought of just why he had to spy on Naruto Uzumaki. After the announcement of a Jinhuriki being made, Sarutobi had vehemently denied Danzo access to the demon, and this had infuriated the old war hawk to no end. He had been able to apply a certain seal to the boy's back, with aid from Orochimaru of course. That was good news. The bad news? He had to watch as Konoha's most valuable tool was reduced to a blathering idiot in orange. The boy may be loyal, but he was as worthless as a blunt kunao. I mean, with him seeking attention everywhere, and the teachers sabotaging his performance, how could he be of any use? Then, he had the unique fortune of learning that Naruto was hiding his skills. Perhaps he wasn't as useless as Danzo originally thought? He had sent some root agents to tail him in his month of being a genin and was thoroughly surprised that he seemed to disappear at random times, and once with the Abarame air. Finally, he had grown frustrated and simply ordered him to be tailed from his home in the mornings till they lost him and to wait at Ichiriku's ramen stand, the Hokage Tower, or his house. He had also ordered that the only Hyuga he had, to ensure that the seal was undamaged. He looked up just as he felt the telltale chakra signature of his spy. His spy looked like a regular umbu, with a blank face mask, and promptly dropped to a knee. "Report," Danzo said forcefully. The root member nodded and replied monotonously, "Sir, Naruto Uzumaki was seen exiting one of the outer Liang forests. As instructed, we had Rat use his Byakugan to ensure that the seal was still undetected. Unfortunately, Rat informed us that the seal is visible via 4 seal tags none of us have encountered before." Danzo's eye widened. "How? No one but Jiraiya should have the skills to allow the seal to be shown, and he hasn't been to Konoha in 12 years. He asked, infuriated. The root member only spoke again, "My apologies, sir, I do not know how, but Naruto Uzumaki was also headed for the Hokage Tower." Danzo started to sweat bullets. "If Hiruzen sees that seal, then I'm going to have to blame someone else or destroy my whole operation," he thought. "However, if the brat suddenly starts experiencing pain, then the old fool will probably take him to the hospital and I can take care of him before they find the seal." Danzo weighed a few other options before deciding that the aforementioned course was the best and proceeded to go to the Hokage Tower. He needed to be in range for the technique after all. He turned to the root agent and said, "Prepare the doctors, they need to remove those seal tags," he said before exiting the cave. Hokage Tower, same time. Naruto strode up to the doors and pushed them open. The last month had done him well. He could form a Rasengan in under 2 seconds, still working on making it instantly. The 2 jutsu scrolls he had obtained, Raiten, Reikyu, Lightning Release, Lightning Ball, and Raiten, Kaminari Saji, Lightning Release, Lightning Surge, were usable, but he had yet to master them. His Taijutsu was still about Haichunin, but he could move faster than most Jounin, Guy excluded. He was, obviously, a high-level seal master. His genjutsu was still non-existent, but Hikari and Amaterasu had made sure he could dispel about 90% of them. Naruto strode towards the stairs that lead to the Hokage's office. The secretary scowled at the boy and said, "You. The Hokage is very busy, he doesn't have time to deal with someone like you." Naruto glared at her with some ki behind it and she visibly shrank from his gaze. "Aji-san always makes time for me, and I have something important to tell him, so you better shut up and go back to work," he said coldly as he took to the secretary meekly went back to her work. She knew what the Sandaime did to the last secretary to refuse Naruto entry. Naruto quickly ascended the stairs and kicked the Hokage's door open. "Old man. We have something to talk about," Naruto said seriously as he closed the door behind him. Sarutobi had been having a rather nice day. The paperwork wasn't too bad. Jiraiya had shipped him an early release of the newest Ika Paradise, and the council hadn't bothered him all day. He had sat back in his chair and taken a deep breath from the tobacco in his pipe when his doors were suddenly thrown open and Naruto striding in, demanding some kind of talk. Sarutobi put his pipe down and looked at Naruto. "What exactly would that be, Naruto-kun?" he asked. Naruto eyed him for a minute before turning around and slapping a seal on the door and muttering a quick kai. The room glowed a bright blue for a second before it died down. "That was a silencing, barrier, and genjutsu seal that will make anyone who listens in believe we are talking about my last D-rank mission. The old lady harassed me, so I thought it would be a good cover," Naruto explained. If Sarutobi had been holding his pipe, he would have dropped it. He stared at Naruto. "How can you make a seal like that?" he asked, shocked. Naruto shrugged. "I've been studying seals for years now, Aji-san, but that's not why I came here, and let's keep on topic," Naruto replied. The Hokage was still trying to compose himself when Naruto rushed forward at his max speed, surprising the not yet recovered old man, and slapped a seal onto the Hokage's chest. It glowed blue with activation and Naruto spoke before the Sandaime could ask, "That is a truth seal. Anything you speak must be the truth or it will change colors to red. A half-truth will appear as yellow, but I may allow those to slide depending on the question. You will answer my questions or I will leave this village," Naruto said seriously. Naruto stayed silent as Sarutobi thought over several scenarios in his head before glaring at Naruto. "What makes you think you can come in here and order me around like this, Naruto? For that matter, Why would you come here simply to ask questions? Ever since the Genin exams, I haven't been able to trust you, Naruto, and this is making it increasingly difficult to do so. He responded. Naruto glared back at the Hokage. I need answers, old man, and you're going to give them to me. You failed horribly at protecting me all my life. You. Oh. Me. Naruto said forcefully. Sarutobi looked visibly saddened by this. Naruto, Naruto interrupted him, you're wasting time, Aji-san. I don't want your apologies, nor your excuses. I want answers. He yelled as he slammed his hands down on the Hokage's desk. Sarutobi flinched and bowed his head. All right, what do you want to know? I can't answer some questions, but I will try to answer as many as I can, he replied sadly. Naruto nodded in satisfaction and said, how many seals are on my body? Sarutobi sighed, only one. He replied. The seal glowed a bright blue, signifying truth. Suddenly his eyes went wide as he thought, if he's been studying seals, then he may know of the Kyuubi. Damn it, how am I gonna explain that? Naruto narrowed his eyes, only the Shiki Fujin correct. He said. Sarutobi's head whipped up and his eyes connected to Naruto's. You know? He asked, slightly fearful. Naruto nodded, yes, again off subject, back to my question. He stated. Sarutobi's eyes seemed to get even sadder. I'm sorry I didn't tell you, Naruto. As to your question, yes, only the Shiki Fujin. He replied sadly. Again, the seal glowed a bright blue. Naruto sighed happily and relaxed into the chair in front of the Hokage's desk. That's good news, Aji-san. I was afraid that you had ordered the extra seals and that I would have to take drastic measures. He said with a rather light tone. Sarutobi narrowed his eyes. What extra seals? He said seriously. Naruto looked at him and said, one last question and I guess I can answer that one. What was the seal on my jumpsuit for? Sarutobi sat silently, going over possible answers in his head, before responding, it was a genjutsu seal designed to make your life easier. The seal glowed yellow, but Naruto already knew about the seal's true purpose, so he left it alone, for now. Naruto nodded, very well. The extra seals, one was a seal to keep me from meeting Kyuubi, that broke about 2 years ago. Please hold all questions and comments until I'm done, Aji-san. Naruto said as he noticed Sarutobi opening his mouth and fear coming across his features. The second seal is really a conglomerate of 3 separate seals. I am currently counteracting the loyalty seal, but the other 2 are harder seeing as they aren't active and I really can't stop them from working without knowing their effects. Still, the conglomerate seal has a loyalty, mind destruction, and summoning seal all rolled into one. The loyalty was to Konoha, the mind destruction was probably stolen from the Hyugas, and the summoning summons shinobi from something called root. Naruto said, eyeing the Hokage. Sarutobi stiffened when Naruto mentioned root. The first seal didn't really affect Sarutobi too much, but the following 2 made him worry greatly. Only Danzo would be so bold as to put a seal like this on Naruto. Naruto noticed the Hokage stiffening and said, you know root, don't you? Sarutobi nodded and sighed, it's a, now defunct, branch of Umbu that was created in the Third War and the Yondaime shut it down shortly after coming into office. Danzo Shimura was the head and I thought he was running underground but had no proof. He replied. The seal glowed blue once again and Naruto nodded his head. So what are you going to? Naruto never got to finish his sentence as pain erupted in his head. Naruto? Naruto? Hikari roared in his mindscape as she flooded his brain with her chakra to counteract the seal. Apparently, someone had decided that the mind destruction was best used right now. Sarutobi was instantly by Naruto's side as he grunted in pain while holding his head. Naruto? Naruto, what's wrong? He asked. SE seal, activation. Use URK. Tags. Naruto said as he doubled over in pain. Sarutobi frowned and immediately started pulling off Naruto's clothes in an effort to find the seal. He pulled off Naruto's shirt so Naruto had only his pants and sandals on when he noticed the seal glowing angrily on his back. He quickly moved to the seal tags around the edges before noticing that they really didn't have anything that would help in the removal of the seal. He was no seals expert, but he could identify most seals. He rushed for Naruto's jacket and dug into the pocket before finding 3 seals. Each one had a kanji 1 summon, loyalty, and mind. The Sandaime quickly rushed back to Naruto and slapped the seals onto their corresponding areas and channeled chakra into the tags. He sighed in relief as he saw the seal become rigid and shatter, the ink flowing off of Naruto's back and onto the seal tags before bursting into flames and falling to the floor. Naruto's eyes rolled into the back of his head and he passed out from the sudden removal of pain. Sarutobi checked his pulse and noticed that it was strong and steady. He let out a breath he hadn't even known he was holding. He removed his fingers from the boy's pulse and took out a handkerchief. He wiped the sweat from Naruto's brow and smiled softly. "You continue to amaze me. You're so much like your father, it's unreal." Suddenly his eyes hardened. Danzo has gone too far this time. He walked up to the seal on the door and ripped it off. He snapped his fingers and 2 Umbu appeared by his side. "Summon the council and the Jounin Corp. All Umbu are to assemble and report to the Hokage Tower immediately. Also, summon Anko Mitarashi to my office. As of now, I am declaring a state of martial law. No one gets in or out of Konoha without my personal approval. Go," he said authoritatively. The 2 Umbu quickly shunshined away and he turned back to Naruto. "You're right, Naruto. I failed to protect you. Your father would be ashamed of me," he said sadly, "but no more. These civilians have forgotten that this is a military dictatorship and I am through playing games. I may be too old for this, but I will fight for you one last time, and I will win," he said forcefully, his eyes shining with strength long since forgotten. This was the sight that Anko shunshined into. She stood silently before clearing her throat. When the Hokage turned to her, she was staring worriedly at Naruto. "Is he okay?" she asked. He nodded. "He will be fine." "Tell me, how much do you know?" he asked seriously. She looked to the old Hokage and quietly sized him up. "Everything. He removed my curse seal," she said, gaining wide eyes from the Hokage. He removed your seal," he said honestly surprised. She nodded and smiled softly while pulling down her collar showing her unblemished shoulder. "Incredible," Sarutobi said as he shook his head. "Anko Mitarashi. As of now, your job is to protect Naruto Uzumaki. I know you will do a good job. I have some house cleaning to do," Sarutobi said as he donned his cage robes and the hat. Anko nodded. "Good. By the way, no one aside from myself is allowed into the office, understood?" he said. Anko nodded again. Sarutobi nodded back and headed out the door just as the 2 Umbu returned to flank him. The Nico, cat, masked Umbu nodded to her superior when he looked to her and said, "Your orders have been carried out. All Jounin and Umbu are assembled and the council is convening as we speak, sir." Sarutobi nodded. "Go ahead of me and make sure every single council member is here. If they aren't, drag them here kicking and screaming if you have to. Return to me when it is done," he said, causing the 2 Umbu to bow and disappear. "No longer Naruto. I will set things right. If not for Konoha, then for you," he thought as he awaited his Umbu. Naruto's mindscape, directly after seal removal. Naruto appeared in front of Hikari's cage, which was modeled as a 2-story spa resort. "Hell no, I'm not going room by room, use your imagination for the setup." Naruto quickly strode up to the resort and walked into the den/welcoming area. It had a giant TV and Hikari was panting sitting on the couch in front of it as she watched the Hokage speak to Naruto. Naruto smiled, along with Hikari, as they saw the Hokage start the way to recovering the Konoha that Naruto's father sacrificed his life for. Naruto smiled, "Thanks for healing me, Hikari-chan. I appreciate it," he said as he sat down next to her. Hikari immediately glomped him, "You baka. You should have just removed the damn thing when you could," she replied angrily. Naruto hugged her and said, "Ma, it all worked out. I'm just glad I can trust the old man again." Hikari separated from him and glared slightly. "He's still lying to you, yeah no," she replied. Naruto waved his hand, "I'll ask him about that later. Besides, from the notes I got from Tou-san, it seems as if he thought my Kaa-san would still be around. I have a feeling something else is afoot and it's not just Danzo," he said. Hikari sighed and nodded. "You may have removed that seal but you're still as forgiving as ever," she said. Naruto shrugged. "That's one thing you can thank the old man for. Although I'll probably punch him for it later," Naruto replied before muttering something about old men and their meddling ways. Hikari giggled. Fine, would you like to wake up now? I'm pretty sure the council has convened and you can catch Danzo in the act," she said. Naruto nodded. "Yeah, I think it's time Danzo gets his due," he replied with a downright foxy smirk. Hikari's grin threatened to break her face. "Oh man, that dude won't know what hit him. I can't wait to see what Naruto-kun will do. I always love a good prank and slash or fight. She thought as she expelled Naruto from his mind. Council chambers, same time. All the council members were in attendance. The various clan heads, Danzo, Homura, Koharu, and the various civilians. The Jounin Corp were assembled below the clan heads while the Umbu commander was sitting next to the Hokage's seat. The door burst open to reveal a very serious Hiruzen Sarutobi. Danzo was immediately on guard. I know that old softy hasn't sent the demon container to the hospital yet. Did he die in Sarutobi's office? As soon as this is over, I need to begin setting up Homura and Koharu so I can get off. He thought connivingly. Sarutobi stalked in and walked up to his seat before sitting down. Koharu, as usual, stood up and looked to her aged teammate, Sandaime-sama, may I inquire as to why you have called the council into session? I was not aware we had a meeting today or any important matters to discuss. She stated, still unaware of the martial law. Sarutobi glared at her until she sat down. As of 10:18 a.m. this morning, I have declared martial law in Konoha. Sarutobi said calmly. This immediately prompted several reactions across the room. The clan heads were mostly surprised, but other emotions ranged from curious, in most cases, to annoyed, in Hayashi's case. The Jounin were in much the same boat as the clan heads and were quietly chatting amongst themselves as to why this was happening. The elders and Danzo were eyeing each other warily. They may have to take drastic measures. The civilians were downright livid. Martial law killed all commerce and would hurt their pocketbooks. How dare the Hokage do such a thing? Sasuke Harano, mother to Sakura Harano, stood up and locked eyes with Sarutobi. Hokage-sama, you can't do that. According to the laws passed 13 years ago, the council must be informed before a state of martial law can be declared. What could possibly have been so important that martial law need be applied? She asked forcefully. Sarutobi released his ki upon the room and everyone was immediately sent to their knees. Danzo, the elders, and the ninja in the room were able to resist it somewhat, but the civilians were hit full force. I find it very curious that a ninja village, like Konoha, has its leader answer to a democratic council that is mainly made up of civilians. Sarutobi said calmly. He lessened his ki, but he was still putting out enough to make everyone nervous. I have grown complacent in the recent years. I was not supposed to take this hat again after Minato was appointed, but the Kyuubi saw fit to steal that from me. He made eye contact with all of the clan heads and said, however, I have had a wake-up call this morning and I will be cleaning house until my successor can be found. Surprise made its way across the room as several people started to gossip as to who could replace the aged legend. Danzo narrowed his eye and thought, could this have something to do with the container? I need to play my cards carefully here. Koharu stood and looked to Sarutobi again. Who would you choose to succeed you? She asked. Sarutobi cut out his ki at this point, having felt that they understood his point. I was debating on that and I will be calling back both of my students to speak with them about this. As of now, I will not speculate, he answered neutrally. Danzo felt compelled to speak and said, you still have not answered why you declared martial law, he pointed out. Sarutobi smirked and was about to speak when the doors to the council room opened and Naruto walked in. Anko quickly followed him and smiled to the Sandaime, who seemed amused that Naruto was making his way towards the center of the room even as whispers broke out across the room. Sasuke stood up. What are you doing here? She screeched. Naruto winced and said, geez, who let the howler monkey into the council? Sasuke went red-faced and several snickers went out across the room. Danzo discreetly moved his hand into a seal and started channeling chakra to kill the boy. Naruto's head immediately snapped to the Warhawk and he smirked. Care to tell us why you're channeling chakra one eye? He asked. Everyone's gaze turned to the old Warhawk and he stopped his chakra flow. I don't know what you talking about, he stated neutrally. Sarutobi focused his gaze onto his old rival. Really? So that wasn't a hand seal to activate something nasty? He asked with a slight undertone of sarcasm. Danzo's eye widened marginally, but he simply responded with a curt no. Naruto raised his hand and put his pointer finger out. His finger glowed with chakra and everyone focused on him. His hand suddenly blurred into action as it wrote a complex seal in under 20 seconds, stunning the onlookers. Fun, hierarchy. Seal, revelation. Suddenly, two Rutumbu appeared behind Danzo. The room broke out into shock as Naruto said, perhaps that is the reason for the martial law. Danzo growled and said, kill him. As the two Root rushed forward, Danzo disappeared into a preset escape hallway that crumbled as he passed certain spots. The two Root charged forward with Tontos poised to kill Naruto. Many of the clan heads and Jounin were tensing to move, when Naruto smirked. His skin suddenly changed to a dull blackish-gray color. His hair seemed to disappear and he became bald. His clothes morphed and became twin red lightning bolts racing down the front of his chest and down his legs. On his back they changed into a shape that resembled a hurricane, again red. His eyes stayed the same glorious blue and held mirth as the two Tontos struck his chest, and bent away from his body. He looks like Greed from FMA, meaning he does not have any genitalia in this form, with lightning bolts on the front and a whirlwind on the back instead of Greed's red lines. Naruto's hands blurred and he yelled out, "Raiden, Kami Nari Saji." Lightning release, lightning surge, as he slammed his hands on the ground and electrocuted the two Root agents. He stood up as Sarutobi looked at him worriedly. Naruto waved his hand, "You shouldn't worry so much, Aji-san. They're heartless husks of humanity," he said simply. Sarutobi nodded and looked to the Jounins, "Chase down Danzo Shimura. I want every Jounin and Umbu level ninja on this, Anko excluded. Chunin are to patrol the village and keep martial law." "Go," he said. The Jounin bowed and won and vanished. He turned to the civilians. "As of now, the Civilian Council is being reinstated as an advisory council only. You are dismissed," he said forcefully. The civilians grumbled but didn't want to mess with the Kami no Shinobi at full force. He turned to the elders and glared, "You two are going to Ibiki to determine whether or not you knew of Danzo's plans," he said and snapped his fingers, causing two of his trusted Umbu to appear and drag the two protecting elders off. He turned to the Shinobi Council and said, "I hope I have your support during this time." They looked at one another until Tsumin stood up smirking fearfully, "You've got my support. I've been telling you to get rid of that old coot for years." "What caused it?" she asked. Sarutobi chuckled at her rather direct approach. Anko and Naruto were both smirking. "Actually, you have young Naruto-kun here to thank for that," he said, causing the clan heads to look at him warily, all except Tsum, that is. She took one look at him and her mental jaw dropped. Holy hell. That old bastard. I'm gonna get him for lying to me. I wonder if I still have that marriage agreement, she thought. As you can tell, she figured out just who the young boy was related to, now that he had removed that orange jumpsuit. Remember, the jumpsuit had the Genjutsu seal on it. Hayashi coldly said, "I highly doubt Uzumaki-san could bring you evidence of Danzo's subterfuge." Shikaku Nara muttered a troublesome as Sarutobi turned a glare to the Hyuga clan head. "Are you calling me a liar, Hayashi-san?" he asked in an icy tone of voice that would make many a Hyuga jealous. Hayashi visibly stiffened, "Not at all, Hokage-sama. I simply find it unlikely that Uzumaki-san could uncover something even Umbu cannot," he replied carefully. Sarutobi sighed. The evidence was on Naruto-kun himself. Apparently, Danzo had placed a seal that bore an uncanny resemblance to your caged bird seal, Hayashi-san. Sarutobi said. Hayashi's eyes visibly widened and he looked at the Hokage. "I will be sure to do a thorough investigation into that allegation," he stated. Sarutobi nodded. "Very good. However, enough of that. I would like to ask for the clan's support during this time," he said. Tsum simply nodded and said, "You have the Inuzuka's support, Hokage-sama. I'll pull our retired trackers into duty to try and find Danzo." Sarutobi nodded in acceptance. Shivi stood up, "The Abarames support you, Hokage-sama. I too will ask some of our retired members to assist in Danzo's capture," he stated. Sarutobi smiled in seeing two of the best tracking clans in Konoha aiding him so greatly. Inoichi Yamanaka, head of the Yamanaka clan, stood and said, "The Yamanakas are behind you 100%, Hokage-sama. We will be happy to interrogate Danzo's route." Sarutobi nodded once again. A mind walked would be good to take care of the interrogations. Shikaku Nara, head of the Nara clan, muttered his clan's famous troublesome and said, "You have the Nara's support as well. We will assist in the planning and capture of the various cells Danzo may have around town." Sarutobi smiled. The Naras were famous tacticians and would make storming the cells much easier and effective. Chauza Akimichi, head of the Akimichi clan, stood and said, "The Akimikas are happy to stand beside you, as always, Hokage-sama. We will focus our efforts on keeping the peace." Sarutobi nodded. The Akimikas were powerful shinobi that civilian and shinobi alike were wary to anger. Hayashi Hyuga stiffly rose and said, "You have the support of the Hyugas as well. I will personally see to it that the caged bird seal information is secure and all those with its knowledge are accounted for. Sarutobi stared for a moment before nodding, letting the man know that he expected it done. Hayashi may have been proud but even he feared the professor. Sarutobi smiled softly, "Thank you for your assistance and support in this matter. I will be in my office so please send all reports there." He turned to Anko and Naruto, "I will speak to you two later. For now, please go somewhere safe. It's rather obvious you have a safe house if you were able to hide your abilities," he said. Naruto and Anko nodded before disappearing. Sarutobi nodded to the clan heads and they disappeared as well. Nico, Cat, appeared beside the aged Hokage as he snapped his fingers, "I need you to sweep the office and these chambers for bugs. After that, join the search." "Dismissed," he said before he headed to his office. He had letters to write to his two wayward students. It was time for the Sunin to return home, permanently. Naruto's lab, sometime that night. Naruto and Anko walked into the lab and Amaterasu smiled at them. "Did it go well?" she asked. Naruto smiled and nodded, "Very well, thanks for asking. I still have a few questions for the old man but they can wait a few days while he cleans things up," he replied. Anko just walked over to the bed and plopped down. She was still tired from a mission the other day. She promptly went to sleep, feeling very safe inside this lab. Hikari materialized outside of Naruto and quickly glumped him as he sat down on the couch. "You scared me earlier. Don't do that again, you got me," she said, worried about his health. Naruto smiled and kissed her, surprising her and causing a 10-minute game of tonsil hockey. When they broke, they noticed Amaterasu was staring with a slight blush on her face. "I'll try not to scare you again," he said with a smirk. Hikari just smirked at Amaterasu. "Ami-chan," she said sing-songily. "You wouldn't want to switch places with me, would you?" she asked sweetly. Amaterasu's blush immediately went full face and she sputtered for a few seconds before her two friends started laughing. She promptly crossed her arms and said, "Meanies," causing another bout of laughter from the blue-eyed couple. Later that night, Hikari, Naruto, and Anko were snuggled into bed with Naruto being happily glumped by both females. Amaterasu smiled softly seeing the three people comfortably asleep. She shook her head and thought, those three are truly a group. A demon, a Jinhyuriki, and a disgraced pupil. Still, I have a feeling that Naruto is destined for greatness. She watched them for a minute more before walking up to the bed and putting her hand on his head. With a small flash, she stepped back with horror across her face. If I wasn't bound by kami rules, I'd destroy half this city. It's a wonder he can still smile, she thought. Slowly a smile spread across her face. Then again, that settles things. It seems I may have a gift for you, Naruto-kun. I hope you can survive it though, she thought as she disappeared from the material plane. Kami's court, midnight. Amaterasu appeared and sat down at her seat among the court. Kami turned to her and Kami's face was grave. "Have you made any progress in locating Orochimaru?" she asked seriously, causing all eyes to turn to the sun goddess. She sighed and shook her head, "Unfortunately not. I was able to find the boy that Kuwabai-chan told us about. She was correct, he can remove the curse seal and I feel he may eventually have the power to rid us of Orochimaru for good," she said. Several murmurs rippled across the room until Sora-ryu, Kami of the Dragons, stood up. "Ha! I bet none of you thought you'd see him again. Check my first fanfic for his description, that is very impressive. I'd wish to test the boy myself if you are saying what I think you're saying," he said as he fingered his twin scimitars. She smiled, "I need a second endorsement but yes. I believe him to be worthy," she stated. Sora smirked, "Very well then, I'll endorse him too," he said, shocking many present. Ryujin had never endorsed anyone. Kami quelled the growing murmurs with a loud silence. She then turned to Yami. "Shall we then?" she asked. Yami chuckled, "If he has their backing, then yes we should. Besides, we need a champion to take down Orochi team," she replied. They turned to the court and said, "In 3 weeks' time, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze will take the immortality trials. Ryujin shall test his honor and courage." Sora smirked and let out a roar of approval. "Inari shall test his cunning and intelligence." A man with short red hair and red eyes stood up with a smile that was eerily reminiscent of Naruto's own, and Susanoo shall test his heart and determine his place. A man with black hair and stormy gray eyes smiled as he looked to his sister. "This is gonna be fun," Susanoo said. The rest of the gods immediately broke out in gossip as to whether or not the mortal would be pass his test. Yujito Nii was having a bad day. Why was she having a bad day? Well, that stems back to the council of her village, and her status in the village. You see, the council has been putting pressure on the Yondaime Raikage of Kumo to put her under a loyalty seal. Now this, what's the word? Ah yes, nifty little seal would make Yujito a mind slave to the council. You see, Yujito was not your average 18-year-old female jounin. She was, in fact, an 18-year-old female jinhiriki, and that made all the difference in the world. The council believed her to be a flight risk, and that, seeing as she was the container for the Nibi no Nikomata, they should have complete control over her actions to ensure her loyalty, not that it had ever been in question. She knew what they really wanted. Most of Kumo respected Killer Bee, jinhiriki of the Hakusabi, because he was the shield that protected them, not to mention he was the brother to the current Raikage. Unlike Killer Bee, however, Yujito was still treated rather harshly. They weren't obvious about it, more like calling her demon whore and cat slut behind her back while being overcharged or refused service in some places. She was never physically abused, and for that she was happy. However, the council wanted her to be their personal fuck toy. She knew it, after all, they had several S-rank seduction missions that they had attempted to send her on. She had refused every single one of them because that wasn't her specialty. Not to mention, she was a virgin and proud of it. Oh sure, she had dated a few guys, but they all seemed to just want to brag to their friends that they had tamed the demon. Yeah, they wouldn't be taming anyone else because they were still in the hospital. She sighed. Long story short, she was having a bad day because people had been treating her worse and worse after finding out about the council's proposal. Her spotless reputation was being called into question, and she had just come from yet another council meeting where they grilled her for some obscure mission. Not to mention the subtle hints that if she just took the seduction missions then they would leave her be. She just wanted to be left alone and respected like Killer Bee. Was that too much to ask for? Still, there were some good points in her life. Samui Nii, a miniature Tsunade without the strength, was her sister in all but blood. Ever since they had met under Killer Bee's training, they had been close, and she thanked her stars that Samui was always there to aid her. Amwa and Karui were also pretty good friends, but they were more engrossed in their little love/hate game than worried about helping her. Killer Bee, it's pronounced A, had been protecting her rather well. She could turn down the council's missions with ease approval, which he always gave, and B had helped her to master Nibi's chakra. Nibi was a sore subject, but she had grown to like Yujito over the years and ended up agreeing to share Yujito's senses in return for control of Nibi's chakra. So far, they had a pretty good relationship, almost like that annoying older sister that claims it's your conscience, or in this case your perverted side. You see, the Nibi no Nikomata was a very horny pussycat, pun intended. She loved to tease Yujito about guys, and even girls, that piqued her interest, and she was a shameless being when it came to describing the acts she would take against said peoples. Needless to say, Yujito learned early on to control her blushes, for the most part, and to ignore the perverted ramblings of Cat who's been sex-deprived for 18 years. She simply shook her head free of these thoughts and continued her walk home. She sighed in contentment as she walked into her apartment. It was good to be home. Still, she mused, it would be nice to have someone to come home to. Unknown casino/hotel room, same time/1 day from Danzo's flight. Tsunade was furiously packing her things away. Why was she running around the room with her head cut off, you may ask? Well, just a few minutes ago, she won the jackpot on the slots with enough money to pay off all her debts and a bit more. Now, when the legendary sucker won, she knew something bad was going to happen. After all, the last time she won, she had to deliver Kushina's baby and the Kyuubi had attacked. Yeah, she didn't get to enjoy those winnings. Too bad for her, her instincts were correct. A small puff of smoke appeared behind her and she turned around to view a white and red monkey. One of Sarutobi's personal messengers, as a matter of fact. He held up a scroll with the kanji for family and said, Hiruzen said to give this to you. I am not to leave until you give me an answer, he said seriously before plopping down on top of Tsunade's suitcase. Tsunade glared at the small primate but sighed and snatched up the scroll before applying some blood and opening it. Not even a minute later she roared, Shizen, causing her wayward apprentice to appear in the room by some cosmic power. Shizen huffed. She had just run up 9 flights of stairs because she had finished sending off the money to the debt collectors and wanted to relax a bit before Tsunade blew out of here. She suddenly heard, Shizen, causing her to double her speed and appear in front of her Shishao. What is it, Tsunade-sama? She asked curiously. Tsunade glared at the small primate in the room. Pack your bags. We leave for Konoha in 3 minutes. We will be there in 4 days, she said, answering the primate's unspoken question. It bowed and disappeared to its next assignment. Shizun was stunned but quietly happy. She did miss the place she had grown up in, although she did wonder why they were returning. They quickly packed and set out. It was time to meet Tsunade's godson. Female onsen, somewhere in Kuni, hot springs country. Perverted giggling could be heard throughout the surrounding forest near a female-only hot spring. This was the great toad sage Jiraiya, author of Ika Ika Paradise and a self-proclaimed super pervert. He was doing research for his next book, which meant he was currently peeping on 3 girls who were having a whose breast is larger competition. This probably doesn't happen in real life, but in my FIC, it does. Yahoo Go girls. Needless to say, Jiraiya thought he hit the jackpot. Too bad for him, Tsunade's luck was rubbing off on him. The same little primate appeared in a puff of smoke behind the perverted man, and sweat dropped as he saw the man didn't even notice him. He cleared his throat 3 times, being ignored every time, before sighing and kicking the man into the onsen while yelling, "Pervert," and chuckling as the girls kicked his ass with their divine fury. When Jiraiya finally returned, he glared at the small primate. The monkey just chuckled and handed the scroll to Jiraiya, saying, "Hiruzen told me to wait for a reply." Jiraiya nodded and opened the scroll, being oddly serious for once. His eyes widened and he quickly took off running. 4 days, he yelled back to the monkey, who smiled and disappeared. Hokage office, same time. The small monkey reappeared in front of the aged Hokage. He bowed to the aged Hokage, who simply nodded back, and said, "They will arrive in 4 days, Hiruzen." The Sandaime nodded and waved his hand in dismissal. The primate bowed again and disappeared. He had already received his payment prior to the assignment. It had been a full day since Danzo had been found out by Naruto's actions. Hiruzen had his best searching for the man, but they were having a hard time. Homura and Kohara were still screaming in their cells about being released, but he just ignored it and ordered Ibiki to take his time with them. He knew he would have a lot of explaining to do when they arrived, but he was putting that off for now. He sighed and took another puff of his pipe. He heard his guards telling someone that he was not to be disturbed before the doors were thrown open, and in walked Ontsum Yazuka and her companion Kuromaru. She glared at the aged Hokage and, despite his earlier reinforcement, she was still pissed with him. "You have some explaining to do, Sarutobi-san," she said seriously as she slammed the door shut behind her, and in the guards' faces. He glared back at her, while sending some of his rather substantial ki at her, reminding her just who he was. "I was not aware I had to explain myself to the council, Inyazuka-san," he stated coldly. Tsum was slightly put off but shook off his words, and ki, before slamming down some papers on his desk and impatiently tapping her foot at him. He sighed and grabbed the papers. He took a good minute to fully read over the papers, his eyes widening as he did so. He put them down and rubbed his temples. "Leave us," he ordered the Hiddenumbu. They quickly appeared and bowed before disappearing. He reached under the desk and activated a security seal that the Yondaime placed in the room. He then looked to the clan head and said, "I would deny that he's alive, but I think this may do the boy some good. Besides, I was planning on informing the boy of his full heritage sometime later this week. After his display in the council room and the help he gave in producing evidence against Danzo, I believe he has earned at least that." Tsum smiled. "So you will honor the agreement?" she asked happily. Hiruzen smiled softly. "If they so wish it, yes. Still, he may have a thing for Anko Mitarashi, so that may get in the way. I will have to speak with him. However, if the girls come to some sort of agreement, I suppose I could mend a few laws to make that work as well," he said with a smirk that screamed, "I just want to get my grandson as much tang as possible." Tsum rolled her eyes at that smirk but chuckled. "I'll speak with Hana about it and, hopefully, they will connect," she said happily. She waited for the Sandaime to stop chuckling before saying, "You still need to explain why you hit him like that. Why hide his heritage and yet release his status as a Jinhiriki?" she asked seriously. Sarutobi sighed. "That was a mistake, but Kushina was supposed to be alive. Without her to protect him, IWA could have easily killed him. It is a flimsy excuse considering what the village did, but, at the time, it made sense. I believed they would follow Minato's last wishes to see his son as a hero and not the demon." "Foolish really," he said sadly. Tsum sighed softly and sat silently for a minute before nodding. I understand your position and will not begrudge you for it. Still, when you inform the boy of his parents, would you be kind enough to let me know? I would like for Hana to be here as well, she said. Sarutobi thought about it for a moment before nodding. Very well. I can accede to that request out of respect for the marriage arrangement, and you were there at his birth. I will explain everything at that time though, so remember to tell Hana that it is all a secret until I, or my successor, says otherwise, he said to the Inyazuka Matirich. Tsum nodded and bowed before leaving the room as the privacy seal dissipated. Time skip, 2 days, Naruto's lab. Naruto sighed as he awoke to a, now normal, feeling. Hikari and Anko happily smothering him between their breasts while they slept, not that he was complaining. He sighed as he remembered his plans for the day. Anko had been insistent about him going to meet the girls. Apparently, they wanted to meet the man that could remove the curse mark as well as steal Anko's heart. He didn't mind going, he just wanted to meet with the old man and learn more about his parents. Still, that could be put off for another day so he could meet Anko's friends. She may have promised to be his sex slave, but she only acted that way when she was trying to make him blush, although he had a feeling it would carry over into other activities as well. He made a cage bunshin and kawaramid with it, making the clone sport a huge grin as it cuddled with them. Naruto's eye twitched, but he sighed and went to make breakfast. 20 minutes later, Naruto dispelled his clone and chuckled as he heard grumbles from his bed. He walked in balancing 3 trays with eggs, bacon, and toast. Morning Foxyheim, Hebeiheim, he said brightly as he set their breakfasts in front of them. He had left a plate on the table for Amaterasu, out of respect and kindness considering she helped him a lot over the past month. They began to eat in silence, but Anko turned to Naruto after a while. So, you gonna come meet the girls? She asked neutrally. She knew he had a problem with many people and, although she wanted him to meet her friends, would understand if he didn't want to risk it. Naruto sighed before smiling softly at his slave/soon-to-be lover. I'd be happy to meet them, Hebeiheim. I just hope they aren't like the rest of the villagers, he said. Anko squealed in delight and glomped him. Thank you. I promise you won't regret it, she said happily as she scarfed down the rest of the food and went to get ready for their morning training session before they met her friends for lunch. Hikari smiled. You are opening up more and more every day, Naruto-kun. I hope this continues. I sorta miss your hyperactive prankster self, she said. Naruto chuckled. I have gotten brighter, haven't I? Still, the pranks aren't going away just yet, Hikari-chan. I've still got to get the old man, and probably any godparents I have, back for their neglect. He said with a foxy gleam in his eye. Hikari's eyes sparkled. I can't wait. She put her finger on her mouth and started drawing circles on the bedsheet while looking as cute as possible. I get to join in, right? She asked cutely, her head tilted to the side and her eyes having an innocent look in them. Naruto took one look at her before his mind shut down and all the teasing the girls had put him through caused several kinky scenarios ran through his head at her actions and slightly disheveled look. Oh, of course, Hikari-chan, he stuttered out with a blush on his face and a small nosebleed. Hikari's eyes turned downright mischievous. Oh, does Naruto-kun have something dirty in mind for me? She asked seductively. Naruto suddenly found himself pressed against a rather well-endowed female chest and a voice whisper hotly into his ear, only if he has something in mind for me as well. Anko's voice carried past his ear. Naruto promptly had a huge nosebleed and passed out twitching as the girls flashed a V sign with their hands before taking care of the dishes while giggling. Noon, girls' meeting bar. Kurane, Hana, and Yojeo were waiting while softly gossiping about recent events. The last few days had been rather hectic, all on account of Danzo. Luckily, these girls had been able to get the day off seeing as their specific talents weren't needed. Kurane and Hana were pretty good trackers, but with too many following the same scent, it gets hard to distinguish between the myriad of smells, so they were excluded. Yojeo, although an Umbu, was a demolition sort of person and the fighting with the root forces was already over seeing as Danzo had fled with most of his forces. Anko smiled brightly as she walked into the bar and turned to Naruto, who was right behind her. You may want to set up a privacy seal if you don't want anyone listening in. She commented as she knew many of the people there would love to find out what he was capable of, if only to hurt him later with that knowledge. Naruto nodded and reached into his pocket, quietly fingering a seal not unlike the one he had used in the Hokage's office. Kurane noticed Anko and quickly waved to her. She waved back and the couple made their way to the table. Kurane and Yojeo were wondering why Naruto Uzumaki was accompanying her but kept silent, waiting for her to explain. Hana, on the other hand, was pretty sure she knew why he was here. Some had told her about who Naruto was and she had every intention of honoring the agreement between their parents, if he accepted. She guessed that he was the one to remove Anko's curse seal and to make those anti-rape seals. If that was an insight to the quality of his character, then she had no doubt he would make a good friend, not to mention husband. Anko quickly sat down at the table with the Haya girls. "How's it going?" even as Naruto took a seat next to her. He discreetly slipped the genjutsu/privacy seal under the table as he slid into the booth. The girls all nodded and said fine before Kurane eyed Naruto. "Not to be rude, Anko-chan, but why have you brought Uzumaki-san to our meeting?" she asked. Anko smiled brightly. "That's simple. You guys have been asking for weeks to meet the guy who removed my curse seal and created those anti-rape seals. Well, here he is," she said happily. The girls' jaws dropped, even Hana's. This kid had made seals that made Jiraiya's accomplishments look like crap on paper? Impossible. Still, they had seen him make some kind of seal in the middle of the council chambers 3 days ago. Hana was there with her mother, Kurane is a jounin, and Yojao is a personal guard to the Hokage, so maybe she wasn't lying? Naruto cleared his throat. "As hard as it is to believe, yes, I am a seals master. I kept my abilities hidden, for reasons that should be quite obvious to everyone here." His eyes turned a steely blue. "Understand that I haven't even told the old man this, and the only reason you're privy to it is because Hebiheim here trusts you," he said seriously. The girls were a little offset by that, but Yojao nodded first. "I understand. My name is Yojao Izuki." She looked around and smirked. "You put up a privacy seal, didn't you?" she asked. He nodded with a bit of surprise on his face and she chuckled. "It's little things. The guys are ogling things that aren't there and they aren't glaring at you specifically. I don't know if this will help, but I'm Nico," she said with a soft smile. Naruto rocked back in his chair before a smile spread across his features. "Good to see you again, Nico-ne-chan. I haven't seen you since my 5th birthday, was it?" he asked. Yojao nodded. "You got too good at hiding after that, you little scamp," she said with a chuckle. Naruto chuckled back. "Yeah, I didn't have much choice in the matter." Noticing her face beginning to drop, he continued, "Still, don't get sad, it all worked out in the end. Plus, I'm not here for pity. Hebiheim has been begging me to come meet you, so here I am. Besides," he said smirking at them, "I heard you all enjoyed my pranks," he asked humorously. The girls all chuckled. "Yep, we sure did. Name's Hana and Yazuka, you know my little runt of a brother Kiba," Hana said, introducing herself happily. Naruto just eyed her for a moment before saying, "You know, from Kiba's description I thought you'd be more demonic," he said. He noticed the tick mark on her head before he chuckled. "He must be blind or something not to notice the obvious relation to angels," he continued. The girls all blinked before Hana's face lit up in a blush. "Why, Yuri just saying that," she said a little flustered, trying to get her blush under control. "Is he hitting on me?" she thought to herself. Meanwhile, Anko was practically smirking up a storm. "Oh, you little rascal. You're putting our teasing to good use. Already getting your harem picked out, nah? I guess I can give you some help," she thought happily. After all, Hana could act just as crazy as Anko sometimes, and that would make having her around a blast. "You should know, Naruto doesn't compliment a girl unless he means it," she said coyly as she took a sip of her sake. Hana's face had gone down, but she just shook her head until she heard Naruto chuckle. "I'm guessing you've never had a man compliment you and actually not have ulterior motives," he stated, a little amused by this fact. Hana just sighed and shook her head, before Kurane nodded in agreement. "Yes, most men are pigs. All they want are to get in our pants," she said haughtily. Anko's eyes suddenly took on a dangerous gleam and, unfortunately, Naruto didn't notice it. "Hey Nai-chan. I totally forgot to tell you guys just how me and Ruto-kun here got together," she said with a smirk. The girls all leaned in a bit closer, eager to hear this story. Naruto, however, was eyeing her warily. "She's up to something," he thought. "Oh, can't you just believe she wants her friends to know the full story?" Hikari asked in his mind, covering for her sister in crime. Naruto answered her quickly, "No," and listened in. She told them about him saving her, and his treatment of her along with helping him train. When she got to the part about explaining his secrets, she looked over to him. He sighed. "There's still something I wish to keep secret, but I suppose I could give you a little insight," he said, gaining their attention. "I have a bloodline. That metallic form you saw in the council room? It's a defensive bloodline that basically makes me impenetrable by regular blades, and even some jutsu won't affect me, he stated, shocking the girls. That's very useful, Naruto. Yojeo said, slightly astonished. The other girls just nodded their agreement. Naruto nodded back and smiled before nodding to Anko. So, he arrives late to training and then takes me back to his hideout, right? Well, we get down there and he tells me all of this and then says, I can remove your curse seal. Now first, I'm all like, you better not be shitting me, and he's all like, I've never lied and I'm not gonna start now. So I tell him I'll be his sex slave if he does it. He says yes, and that's how we are today, she said happily. Naruto had only a second to realize that he'd just been played when three kunoichi turned to him with a fire in their eyes. You did what? Kurane said angrily. The other two women advancing dangerously fast. Naruto waved his hands in the air. Wait, she didn't tell the whole story. The girls didn't seem to care and were almost on top of him when he squeaked out, please don't hurt me. That's when Anko busted out laughing. The girls all turned to her with surprised looks on their faces. Oh man. That was priceless. I haven't been able to prank Ruto-kun like that in months, she said with tears in her eyes. Hana was the first to calm down and she turned to Naruto. What didn't she tell us? She asked with a slight fire behind her eyes. Naruto peeked out from his fetal position and looked around. I refused at first, it wasn't until she kissed me that I nodded in a daze, he said, still fearful of the divine wrath of women. Yojeo turned to Anko and said, is that true? Getting a nod from the other purple-haired woman, she sighed, sorry Naruto. I guess we sorta jumped the gun there, she said apologetically. Naruto chuckled nervously, it's fine, but I'm still going to get you back for that one, Anko-chan. Using divine fury is off limits, I thought we agreed on that, he said. Anko gulped. Naruto may have been using a mask to hit his skills, but his pranking abilities were still top-notch. Alright, she said nervously. Kurane frowned, you still shouldn't have accepted her offer. It's degrading and Anko shouldn't have to slave herself out to you simply to satisfy some ego you have, she said to Naruto. Naruto glared back, don't you blame this on me. She offered, I refused, and then she practically forced me to agree. Besides, he looked at Anko, any straight male, or gay female, would jump at the chance to claim her. However, I refuse to acknowledge her as just a slave. If you have a problem with what she offered, too bad, because she's mine now, he said heatedly. He loved Anko and he'd be damned if one of her friends was going to claim she was just his slave. The girls were all taken aback by this. Anko was actually blushing lightly. No one had ever claimed her so heatedly before. Not to mention his blue chakra had created a slight haze around himself, showing just how much chakra he really had. Hana was staring and thought, loyal and a bit possessive, but that's fine by me. Besides, everyone knows what they say about men with a lot of chakra, she thought with a mental giggle and slight perverted nosebleed. Kurane was a little put off by the declaration but narrowed her eyes at the last statement. She's yours? What makes you think? She didn't get to finish her statement as Anko was glaring at her. Kurane, you're my best friend, but if you keep pissing Naruto-kun off, then we are going to have serious trouble. I'm the one who offered, and I have yet to regret it. He's a perfect gentleman, not to mention fun as hell to tease. If you can't accept it, then we will have to stop being friends, she said seriously. Kurane may be her best friend, but Naruto had done more in the past 2 years than anyone had in a long time. She had no intention of giving that up, and she knew that he would never hurt her, at least not consciously. Besides, he knew what it was like to be alone, and she didn't want to have to feel that again, or let him feel it again, even if he had Hikari. The girls all seemed shocked at that statement. Anko had never told one of her friends that someone else was more important than their friendship. It just didn't happen. Kurane looked at her, why Yurike kidding? You're just gonna let him treat you like a slave? She asked incredulously. Anko nodded her head, I promised him I would and I keep my promises just like him. Besides, he's never treated me that way and, if he ever did, he'd have quite a few people raining righteous fury upon him, she said giggling as she thought of Hikari, Ayam, Tuki, Irika, and Amaterasu. Ayam and Tuki had been informed of his abilities and his secrets after the little council debacle. Needless to say, Ayam had very nearly gone apeshit at the prospect of her being a slave, but it had all worked out in the end with a few death threats. Naruto shook his head, geez, you make it sound like I'm some horndog just looking for more pussy, Kurane-san. I'd appreciate it if you thought before speaking and take into account just what I've done and what I have invented, not to mention you don't even know me, he said, slightly chiding the woman for jumping to conclusions. Kurane hung her head and took his advice while thinking on what she knew. She was about to speak again when Naruto sighed, "Look, I didn't come here to turn this into a philosophical debate or some fight over an agreement. I was hoping to get to know you better because you're all important to Anko-chan. Let's forget about the joke and the argument and just spend some time talking, okay?" he asked. The girls looked to one another before nodding. "Deal," they said happily before launching into learning about one another. Hana actually didn't like flowers, Kurane had a thing for shiny knickknacks, hell Yojao liked to sunbathe in the nude. Needless to say, she threatened Naruto about letting that secret out and he happily complied, lest he lose something important to his future family, namely his ability to create said family. It was soon 1:30 and the girls all had things to do. Anko had an interrogation, Yojao had the late night shift for the Hokage guard, and Kurane needed to meet her team since she had used the morning for her friends. The three girls all got up and left, leaving Naruto and Hana, although Anko yelled back, "Inyazuka are said to be wild in bed, Naruto-kun. Just leave some for me later," causing the two people to go bright red from the implications. Naruto chuckled and shook his head. "So, what are you doing this afternoon?" he asked, genuinely curious. Hana chuckled as her blush faded. "Well, I need to do a checkup on the Inyazuka kennels and I was planning on leaving soon. If you want to join me, I could use a hand wearing out the more friendly dogs," she said. Naruto thought for a moment before smiling. "Sure, I don't have anything else to do and playing with the doggies sounds like fun," he said a little childlike. "What? He's still 12. Hana chuckled again and shook her head. "Yes, the doggies would love to meet someone who can outrun Umbu," she said humorously. "So he's still a bit childlike, but that's okay. He's serious when he needs to be. I wonder how he will be with the dogs," she thought as she led her probable fiancé to the kennels. Inyazuka kennels, 1:45 p.m. Hana arrived at the kennels only to find her mom just arriving with the needed materials to ensure regular checkups, and the special materials used to check the pregnant dogs. Some noticed Hana come in with Naruto. She raised an eyebrow but smiled and said, "Hello Mizume. I was beginning to think you had forgotten your job." Hana blushed slightly at the jibe. "Sorry about that. Anko-chan brought Naruto-kun to Girls' Day because of certain reasons and we sorta lost track of time," she replied a little abashed. Naruto looked around the area and noticed that they were in a stable-like house with cages instead of stalls, although most of the cages were open so the various ninkin could interact. He could notice a large open pen in the back where he heard a lot of yipping, he assumed from the puppies. He quickly ran through a few seals and the kennel glowed a slight blue. Hana and Tsum looked at him curiously. "Hello Tsum-san, it is a pleasure to meet you." He smirked. "It seemed that you enjoyed my little show with Danzo," he said. Tsum barked out a laugh. "That's right. I enjoyed it thoroughly. Too bad we couldn't catch the bastard," she said, gaining a nod from Hana and Naruto. She eyed him for a moment before saying, "Say, could you explain what you did to those roots blades? And that seal was interesting too." She noticed his wary look and she raised her hands in a placating gesture. "I ain't fishing for any bad reason, but it is rather interesting that you have never shown these abilities before," she smirked. "Besides, Hana brought you home so you're either a stray or a potential mate," she said teasingly. Hana and Naruto both blushed but didn't look at one another. Hana stomped her feet and yelled out "Mom," indignantly. Suddenly a gruff voice chuckled from the back. "Quit teasing the pups, Tsum. But I would also like to know about your abilities, Naruto-san," Kuromaru said, stepping out from checking on his mate. Naruto stared at Kuromaru for a few minutes before Kuromaru's eyebrow began to twitch. Naruto smiled. "Sure, but I get to scratch your ears while I talk," he said happily, not in the slightest bit deterred by the warning looks given to him by Tsum and Hana. Kuromaru raised his one eyebrow and growled lightly. "Why's that pup?" he asked, genuinely curious, and slightly peeved at such a childish request. Naruto chuckled, "Because it looks like you could use a good stress relief. Besides, I've heard tales of how rough you're supposed to be and I wanna see if they're true," he said with a hint of a challenge in his voice. He never had the chance to really pet a dog before and he wanted to. Besides, his secrets wouldn't be secrets much longer, no sense in hiding them from someone who had never hurt him. All was silent. Hana and Tsum wanted to facepalm but resisted because they knew Kuromaru was going to attack the boy stupid enough to request something so childish. They did not expect him to chuckle and say, "Very well pup. but your hand moves somewhere it's not supposed to be and you'll be missing it. He turned to the stunned Inuzukas as Naruto walked next to him and sat down. I like this pup already. And if this gets out, I'll chew your tits off, clan laws be damned, he said as he put his head in Naruto's lap and enjoyed the petting. Tsum and Hana just stood dumbstruck until Hana had one thought. Well, at least I know he's good with the Ninken. Meanwhile, Tsum thought, if he can get Kuromaru to trust him, he'll fit in very well here, even as they sat down and began to look to Naruto for an explanation. Naruto sighed, I did promise, and your clan has never hurt me, but I must ask that you not speak of this until the Hokage announces it. I will be speaking with him, probably tomorrow, so it really shouldn't be an issue, he said. They all looked at one another, Kuromaru included, and nodded in assent. Good. The thing with the blades, well, simply put, it's my bloodline, he said, shocking the girls and the dog as they all knew of his heritage. Although, they couldn't let him know that, yet. Be bloodline? How? Tsum asked, stunned. Naruto shrugged, guess I got it from my parents or something. Anyways, it's like an ultimate defense. At the basic level, it will deter just about any blade. Advanced levels will give me protection from even special blades, although it won't stop them completely, and even against some jutsus. You will understand that I won't go into more info than that right now, he said, trying to maintain some knowledge of his bloodline from open eyes. He didn't point out the weaknesses for that very reason. Hana and Tsum both nodded, after all clan secrets were the same way. Good. As for the seal, I found that, by focusing enough chakra into my finger, I could make seals in midair by using my chakra as a medium, he said. He looked at Tsum. Does she know? He asked. She nodded and he sighed. I think it's got something to do with Kyuubi really, but I have no way to be sure. I've heard that other Jinhuriki gain special traits of their Biju, so I guess this is mine, he finished explaining. The women were silent until they heard a thumping sound. They looked around until they noticed that Naruto had apparently hit a very sensitive spot and Kuromaru's leg was twitching. They proceeded to laugh their heads off, much to Kuromaru's dismay. As they stopped laughing, Naruto wiped the tears from his eyes. I know that was funny and all, but don't you have work to do? He asked, pointing to the dogs. Hana blushed slightly. Right, sorry. Well, I won't tell anyone, just talk to the Hokage soon, huh, she said. Naruto nodded and Tsum voiced her agreement before heading out, taking the pleased Kuromaru with her. That kid knew just what spots to hit and he may have to visit him sometime. Hana decided to get started and went to the puppies first. Since they were the most energetic, Naruto spent a lot of time distracting the puppies as Hana did her various checkups. She would often stop and smile at Naruto, seeing him quite happy, and the puppies were taking to him very well. Needless to say, this was only adding points in her book. The bigger dogs took a shorter time, but they really wore Naruto out and it was getting close to dinner time. Hana noticed this and offered for him to join them, but he declined, saying that he was just tired and wanted to head home for the night. He appreciated the offer, and she thanked him for his help, before he quickly made his way to his apartment. The martial law had been lifted earlier that day, so he was good for now. He planned on getting lots of sleep. Tomorrow was going to be an important day. Next day, Hokage's office, 8 a.m. Sarutobi sighed in contentment as he looked at the scroll in front of him. It contained everything that Naruto would receive from his parents. It wasn't much, just the keys to their estate and the bank accounts, but that was because Minato and Kushina had died without leaving anything, both assuming Kushina would live. Of course, he didn't know that Minato already left Naruto all of his seals, but that's beside the point. He didn't know when Naruto would talk to him again. He still seemed rather annoyed with him after the council meeting 3 days ago. It seemed he wouldn't have to worry about that as his door suddenly opened and Naruto walked in with Anko right behind him. He leveled a stare at his Aji-san, although this meeting would determine if he still held that title. Aji-san. We were interrupted the other day and I won't wait another. I want to know who my parents were, he said seriously. Anko was standing behind Naruto as he took a seat, but remained quiet. She knew this meeting was going to be important and serious. Sarutobi smiled. No need to wait, Naruto-kun. I just have to call someone in for this discussion and I will tell you everything I know, he said happily. Naruto was a little taken aback at Sarutobi's quick agreement. You're not going to argue with me about some secret or something? He asked, surprised. Sarutobi's smile dropped a bit. I have made many mistakes throughout my life, Naruto. Only recently have I realized just how badly I screwed up trying to protect you. You are obviously at least Chunin level and I believe you deserve this after everything you have been through. He said sadly. He snapped his fingers and Nico appeared next to him. Please get me some Inyazuka and Hana Inyazuka. Tell them it involves Naruto Uzumaki, he said. The Umbu quickly bowed and shunshined away. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Why did you ask them here? He asked. They didn't mention what I told them yesterday, did they? He thought sadly. I doubt that, Ruto-kun. Inyazukas are like dogs, fiercely loyal and honest. Maybe they have some sort of connection to your parents. Hikari theorized. Oh, you will learn why in a moment. I would like to keep this information secret for now. Just know that they have an agreement with your parents, he said, dodging the question as he did want to keep this a secret. Naruto nodded and sat silently. Sarutobi looked at Anko and back at Naruto before leaning forward and saying, if I may, what exactly is your relationship to one another? He asked them. Naruto craned his neck to look straight up and Anko looked at him. Naruto sighed, since you're explaining everything, I will too. Just hold off on that question for now, he said. Sarutobi nodded and leaned back in his chair. He could wait. Luckily, he didn't have to as Hana and some shunshined into the room, along with Nico. The Sandaime smiled, ah, good you're here. Nico, please inform my secretary that I will be in an important meeting and to not be disturbed unless someone is attacking the city. Also, please do not return to the room and stand guard outside, he said. Nico nodded and bowed. Sarutobi looked to Naruto, who sat there for a moment before chuckling and handing a tag to Anko. She shook her head and muttered, lazy, under her breath before slapping the tag on the door. Tsum and Hana both took a seat, with Anko opting to lean against the wall near Naruto. Now that that's over with. I believe the first order of business is to tell you who your parents were. Sarutobi said, your mother was Kushina Uzumaki, the red-hot hot-blooded habanero and Red Death of Konoha. Your father was Minato Namikaze, the Yondaime Hokage of Konohagakuer and the Kiroa Senko. They were both S-class shinobi with flee on-sight orders. Iwa and Kumo fear them greatly and they would seek any retribution to strike at their children. That is why I withheld your heritage. At the time, Konoha was too weak to fight them off, so the announcing of a jinhuriki was a political maneuver. Aside from that, your father wanted you seen as a hero, not the beast. Obviously, that didn't work out. Sarutobi explained. He decided to pause and let that sink in for Naruto. Surprisingly, Naruto rolled his eyes. I knew about Tio-san already. I'm more interested in my Kaa-san. Is she still alive? Is she dead? Aside from that, do I have any godparents? Still, I do appreciate the extra information, he said. Sarutobi looked at Naruto in surprise and said, how did you know about Minato? That was one of the best kept secrets in Konoha. Naruto chuckled, where do you think I got the materials for sealing? He, apparently, sealed all of his sealing knowledge into my arm. The first book came to me on my 6th birthday. The rest were set to come out as I unlocked it by advancing in seals levels or all of them at age 18. If I died, it was set to use some chakra that saturates the body after death and summon the materials somewhere, probably his house, but I'm not 100% sure until I see where the ending seal is. Naruto explained. As far as figuring it out, he left 2 notes in the seal and the information for Reiznan and Hiroshin no Jutsu. Not hard to figure it out when only one person ever used them prominently. Naruto said. Everyone's jaw dropped. And Naruto? You know the Hiroshin no Jutsu? Hana asked. Naruto shook his head. Not yet, gimme a month or so and probably. Although it will probably take longer than that to master it because my resistance seal isn't high enough. Tio-san had his at 8 but he recommends 9 for optimal usage and strain on the body. I'm currently at 7, the lowest level to actually use it, but I'm still having trouble properly sensing the kunao, he replied. But, enough of that, we are getting off topic. My earlier questions please. Naruto said, staring at Sarutobi. Tsum spoke up, your Kaa-san is presumed dead. The maternity ward was destroyed in the Kyuubi attack and she was in it when it collapsed. Although, we never found her body, so she is officially listed as missing in action, she explained. Naruto nodded and Sarutobi sighed and prepared himself for a verbal backlash. As to your godparents, yes you do. Tsunade Senju and Jiraiya of the Sunin. Tsunade believes you to be dead with Kushina and left Konoha 2 hours after the attack finished. She never stuck around because she believes Konoha has taken everything from her. Jiraiya, I lied to him and he just hasn't been in Konoha long or often enough to run into you. Even if he did, he wouldn't recognize you. Sarutobi said sadly. He could see the fire burning in Naruto's eyes and decided to answer his unasked question, the seal you asked about, the one on your jumpsuit. It confused people into thinking you couldn't be related to the Yondaime. The seal was a deterrent to keep people from guessing your heritage. I am truly sorry, Naruto, he said, hanging his head in shame. Hana, Tsum, and Anko all glared at the old man, but they quickly turned their gazes to Naruto. He was personally waging an internal battle of whether to kill the old man, or just maim him. Hikari was respectfully quiet because this was a personal problem and she would not offer advice unless he asked it. Naruto closed his eyes and took a deep breath before leveling a glare at Sarutobi. Is that all, Hokage-san? He asked. Sarutobi visibly flinched but said, not all. It seems that Kushina, through Tsunade, wished for a marriage contract between you and Miss Hana here. It simply states that you two are to be wed at your 16th birthday unless the both of you, bearing outside influences, wish to annul it. I may not have much rapport with you, Naruto, but... He looked into the young man's eyes. I would hope you at least give Hana a shot. Tsum was an old friend of your mother's and I'm sure they would both love to see you together, he said. Naruto closed his eyes and took another breath. He shook his head as he thought, damn you, old man. I'll get you for this. Naruto slowly stood up and brought his hands together. Everyone cocked their heads until, in a poof of smoke, Naruto was gone and Naruto was standing there mostly naked, much to Sarutobi's horror as he passed out from blood loss. You just did that to get back at him so you can forgive him, huh? Hikari thought, chuckling at his prank. He mentally nodded and dropped his jutsu to face the, now annoyed women. He chuckled nervously, look, I know it isn't very gentlemanly to knock him out like that, but I had to get him back for the shit he's put me through. I usually only use that as a gag against perverts. He looked to Hana and sighed before a smile went across his lips. Well, Hana-chan, I hope to get to know you better. I will warn you, however, I'm not the one you have to impress, he said, smirking. Hana looked confused and said, I would like to know you better as well, but what do you mean by that? Naruto chuckled, just wait till the old man comes back around. After I'm done, Hikari-chan will test you, he said as he sat back down. Tsum and Hana shared a look while Anko had a gleam in her eye. Oh joy, I get another harem sister to tease. Hana is a good friend and will probably be a good lover for Naruto. Anko thought happily. Meanwhile, Hikari was thinking, hee. An Inyazuka. Perfect. Loyal, and she's probably going to love anal so Naruto can enjoy whatever he likes. Now all I need to do is get Ami-chan in here and we could have some real fun. Sarutobi came back and groaned slightly. Glad to see you're up, Aji-san. Since you came clean with me, I'll come clean with you. First. He walked up to the still recovering Hokage and kneed him in the crotch. That's for making me have this damn forgiving complex. Don't you know if you tell a kid for years to forgive that it's nearly impossible to be angry if someone asks forgiveness? The Oryoke no Jutsu was for everything else, so I'll let that slide. Naruto said. Despite the pain in his balls, Sarutobi smiled as he realized he was forgiven and sat in his chair, tenderly. Okay, don't interrupt me, he said, getting nods from the uninformed peoples in the room. Now, I met Kyuubi on my 10th birthday. Yes she, is very nice actually. She even offered me a bloodline. Naruto went on to explain everything, even his bloodline's weaknesses and the 3 levels that protected him. You will find out what they do later. His seal's master status, although not officially recognized, his discovery of Oro Team's lab as well as his training. Needless to say, they were shocked. Sarutobi rubbed his temples, so Hikari was controlled. Are you sure? He stopped his sentence as he noticed Naruto's, and surprisingly Anko's, glare. Right. Well, I have your inheritance here. So you will be a clan. After your lineage, and declaration of your bloodline, you will probably be forced into the CRA. Is that acceptable to you? He asked. Naruto chuckled and Hikari appeared next to him. Sounds good to me. Besides, Anko-chan's already slated to be with us, I say the more the merrier. Everyone stared at her for a moment before she disappeared and reappeared with Hana standing near the back of the room. She proceeded to do much the same thing she did to Anko years before, getting a nosebleed from the Inyazuka and a nod, before saying, "Welp, she's okay with me, Naruto. Just get to know her better case." Naruto nodded and Hikari happily plopped herself down in his lap and started to purr as he petted her tails. Sarutobi sighed again, Hikari, I presume. He said, getting a nod from the Demoness. Well, I just want to say, thank you for helping Naruto. I appreciate it, he said. Now, Naruto, this scroll has your family's bank accounts and your house keys. Please enjoy it, and I will probably call you for a meeting sometime tomorrow or the next day and a council meeting next week for the instatement of the Namikaze clan. Okay, he said. Getting a nod from the blonde-haired boy, he chuckled seeing the excitement in his eyes, and he handed the scroll over. It's right next to the Inyazuka's compound actually. Now get out of here and enjoy the compound, Naruto-kun, he said with a smile. Naruto beamed and said, thanks Jan Aji-san, as they all disappeared in a mass shunshin. Sarutobi chuckled before noticing the paperwork piling outside his door and nearly crying. He suddenly noticed a piece of paper on Naruto's chair and read it. Dear Aji-san, use Kage Bunshin for paperwork, ya old coot. Signed, Naruto Namikaze. He proceeded to bang his head on the desk until he made 3 KBs and they got to work. He sighed as he pulled out Ika. It was a good day for the Hokage. Next day. A loud booming was heard and people all looked to the main gate of Konoha to see a happy sight, that they would soon learn to dread. Gamabunta with Tsunade and Jiraiya on his head. The Sunin had returned home. Jiraiya and Tsunade sat in Sarutobi's office fuming. Shizun was quietly sitting on a couch with Taunton in her arms, staring at her master with worry in her eyes. Once they had all arrived, via towed carriage, they had made a beeline for the Hokage's office. The two women had met Jiraiya about a day ago and had realized they needed to go faster if they wanted to be there by the next day, hence the Gamabunta summon. Now, they were waiting on Sarutobi to enter. He had apparently been needed at a short council meeting just a few moments ago and had yet to return. To clarify, Tsunade received her letter from Sarutobi telling her that Naruto was alive. After the Kyuubi attack, she had left several hours before the declaration of the Jinhuriki, so she had never heard that news. She had assumed Naruto's and Kushina's deaths when she couldn't find them amongst the rubble of the hospital and had promptly fled, never to look back. Jiraiya, however, had been a trickier opponent. The Sandaime had lied to the Toad Sennin and told him that the Yondaime had used a random orphan since the hospital had collapsed on his son and wife. Luckily, Jiraiya had been so depressed over the Yondaime's death that he hadn't bothered to take a second look at Naruto, and he had immersed himself in his research and his spy network, so he hadn't run into the young Jinhuriki. Soon the doors opened to reveal a Hokage. Both the Sunin had to take a second to reacquaint themselves with their sensei. They had noticed his deteriorating will of fire before his retirement, but to see it burning so brightly forced them to remember that this wasn't the kind old man that he had been during Minato's reign as Hokage. This was the Kami no Shinobi, the man who led Konoha through 2 wars and won, not to mention the man who trained one of the world's greatest shinobi teams. By the time they had refocused on him, he had sat down and waved the umbu in the room off before activating the security seal Naruto had been kind enough to install for the old man, actually better than the Yondaimes. He sighed and looked at his students. Before this gets ugly, know that Naruto already knows of his heritage, he said. Both of them looked shocked until Tsunade rounded on her sensei. Why didn't you tell us he was alive, she asked, her anger just barely under control. Sarutobi sighed. Naruto's heritage needed to be kept a secret. If you had known, you would have tried to take care of him, and that would have brought not only your enemies but Minato's and Kushina's as well, he explained. Naruto may have forgiven him, but he knew his students wouldn't be so kind. Both Sunin were quiet for a moment, taking in the information. You still had no right to hide it from us, sensei. You should have told us. Even if Jiraiya had his spy network, I could have protected him, even against those enemies. Anything is better than being alone for a Jinhuriki. Tsunade said. Sarutobi frowned. So I was to allow you to take Naruto and run around Fire Country, completely unprotected save you? I think not. The council would have ripped me to shreds and you would have been hunted down. Sarutobi said loudly. Besides that, forcing Naruto to grow up on the move? Never knowing stability or his home. That is almost as bad, the aged Hokage roared. Jiraiya frowned. That is still no excuse for lying to us, sensei. Who gave you the right to hide Naruto from us, his family? He asked with disappointment in his voice. Sarutobi sighed in frustration. I am Hokage, I was doing what I believed to be correct. Hindsight is 20/20ths and I am not going to debate my actions with you now, he stated. He had already been grilled by his adoptive grandson and he was tired from the last week. Tsunade slammed her hands down on the desk, covering up the opening of the door. Hokage my ass. You are going to answer. She never got to finish because she found herself mute. I'd appreciate it if you didn't yell at my Aji-san, Oba-san. Naruto stated calmly as he stood behind them, a chakra seal, a seal he made from his chakra, glowing brightly in the air. The occupants of the room, sans the Hokage, were shell-shocked. They had not been informed of his abilities. I'm going to drop this seal and you are going to be quiet until Aji-san has reapplied the security seal. Understand? He asked coldly. The three people and one pig nodded their heads. Naruto nodded and the seal faded away. Sarutobi chuckled as he reactivated the genjutsu seal. That was a rather nifty seal, Naruto-kun, and thank you for the assist, he said smiling. Naruto shook his head. I'm the only one who gets to grill you on your bad decisions, Aji-san. Suddenly his eyes took an evil glint. Besides, I'm still not finished getting you back for my forgiveness complex, he said. Sarutobi turned ashen. Whatever do you mean? He asked nervously. Naruto chuckled darkly. You know what I mean, Aji-san. Suddenly the atmosphere became less ominous, but that's not why I'm here. I heard of the sun coming back and your Umbu met me on my way here. So, why did your Umbu ask me to come meet you? He asked with a raised eye. By this time, the other people, Squeal, and Pig, Squeal, had regained their wits but had opted to keep silent for now. Sarutobi sighed and thought for a moment before saying, the Shinobi Council asked me for information about your little show against Danzo the other day. Naruto's eyes darkened. Didn't you just get them in line? I hope. Naruto didn't get to finish as Sarutobi cut him off. They only asked Naruto-kun. Still, they do have some rights as clans. I wanted to know if you would be so kind as to give us a true showing of your abilities. I am asking for this, not the council. It is for their benefit as well, but that is a moot point, he said. Naruto closed his eyes and sighed. I can do that. However, I refuse to show all of my bloodline. Showing its weaknesses is just plain stupid. As a reference, I could take down a mid to high level Chunin with some difficulty. Anything Jounin or higher and I would have to prepare for a specific opponent. Naruto said. Sarutobi nodded, thank you. At the same time, would you like to release your heritage to the Shinobi Council? Most of them are on your side. The only thing I could see them asking is for you to have the CRA, he stated. Naruto thought again before smiling softly. Yes, that will be fine, however I would like the public announcement to wait until after I am Jounin level. Naruto said. Sarutobi smiled and nodded, a sound plan, Naruto-kun. He eyed his students, since that is out of the way, allow me to introduce your godparents, Tsunade Senjo and Jiraiya. I believe we have already spoken about the reasons for them not being here, he said. Naruto nodded and turned to them, understand something right now. I'm not a very trusting person and you have missed out on much in my life. This earned frowns from both adults, however, that was not of your own volition so I may yet forgive you. Thank the old man for that, he said while muttering something about scheming old men. He shook his head as smiles appeared on their faces. In any case, I am currently engaged to Hana Inyazuka, Anko Mitarashi, and Hikari Kitsune. While I haven't asked Anko, I plan to later, especially if I am under the CRA. For now, I wish to know what you will be teaching me, he said. Luckily, Hikari was asleep so he didn't have to deal with her squeals of joy. The adults looked stunned, however Shizune was the first to recover. Why would you ask that? She asked. Naruto looked at her with a raised eyebrow. I have raised myself, I don't need godparents in that respect. I have a rather lucrative seals business and have no need for money with my inheritance or a place to live. In short, I asked because that is the only thing that they currently have to offer me that I find useful. Besides, I spend most of my time training so that is the quickest way to gain my trust, he stated simply. Tsunade and Jiraiya looked at one another and Jiraiya sighed. I'll go first, he said raising his hand. I can teach you the Raise Non and Toad summoning, like your dad. I have a few other jutsu and abilities I'd be happy to teach you but some of them depend on your elemental affinity, he said. Naruto shook his head. Sounds like you're not very helpful. He said sadly. Jiraiya was about to open his mouth when he noticed the swirling ball of chakra in Naruto's hand. I mastered it a few days ago. I can make it in under 2 seconds. Toads don't really interest me. I'll keep my options open but we will see. My affinities. I think Yamato-sensei was planning on finding that out later this week. He said. How long did it take you? And how did you know how to do it? Jiraiya asked. Naruto sighed and explained the seal Minato put on him. Everyone, sans the Sandame, was very impressed with that. I see. I'll try and help you with whatever I can. I was also planning on helping you to access the Kyuubi's. He said before being cut off. No, I will not use the Kyuubi's chakra. Naruto said, glaring at the Toad Sennin. Jiraiya looked at Naruto with surprise in his eyes. No? Boy, that's ridiculous. You have its unlimited chakra at your disposal and you don't want to. He said, once again being cut off. Its chakra is toxic to my body. I cannot control myself when in a tailed state, and it would take years of work, and experience, to control it, and I doubt I have that kind of time before enemies start coming after me. Kyuubi's chakra is a last resort. He stated clearly, obviously keeping his cool whilst not mentioning Hikari's status. Jiraiya frowned, but the glares from Sarutobi and Naruto were enough to keep him quiet. Tsunade sighed, my turn. I can teach you advanced chakra control, and maybe medical jutsu if you prove apt for them, but I doubt you will be able to use my super strength. I don't know much about elemental manipulation, but I do have an earth affinity. Whatever I can do to help, I'll be happy to do, she said sadly. Naruto sighed and closed his eyes. I can use the chakra control training very much. I doubt I'll be able to use healing jutsu though. Maybe you could teach that to one of my fiancés? Hana might be a good choice because she is the Inuzuka's head vet, he stated. Tsunade nodded and her eyes brightened at that prospect. Suddenly Naruto smirked. Now, I have a present for the old man. He's been Hokage for too long and Konohamaru needs more time with his grandpa. Everyone looked confused. You have a choice, one of you must be the next Hokage. They both opened their mouths, but Naruto glared at them and they shut up. I need someone sympathetic to me, and Konoha needs someone with an iron grip. Danzo has fled, Kakashi is too damn lazy, Gaia is, shudders, don't even ask. That leaves only you two. Duke it out, rock paper scissors, hell, have sex with one another for all I care, just choose, he said. That last comment made Tsunade turn bright red and Jiraiya to pass out. Shizune was red with embarrassment while Sarutobi was giggling quietly. Tsunade looked around inside. Can we have a little time to think about it, Gaki? This place still holds some bad memories for me, and the pervert, she said. Naruto nodded. That's fine. Since you're awake, when do you want to start training? He asked, knowing his sensei was still busy with the whole Danzo debacle. Tsunade smirked devilishly. Right now, Gaki, meet me at training ground 10, she said before disappearing, along with Shizune and Taunton. Naruto sighed and shook his head. He waved to Sarutobi before disappearing. Sarutobi chuckled and made 3 cage bunshins to handle the paperwork and pulled out his ika. He started giggling perversely until his eyes widened in horror and he screamed out, "Damn you, Naruto Uzumaki!" Naruto had switched his porn with Yaoi. Training ground 10. Naruto chuckled as he heard the scream and Tsuan looked at him with a raised eyebrow. Switched his porn with Yaoi? Naruto answered. Tsunade smirked while Shizune giggled. That'll teach the old man to keep secrets from me, he said with a smirk. Tsunade shook her head. In any case, Gaki, you need to tell me the extent of your training so we don't have to review what you already know, she said as Taunton and Shizune sat down on the side. Naruto nodded. Well, Oba-chan, he said, getting a twitch from his debo, godmother, I can do both tree and water walking for 2 hours without being winded. I can fight on both surfaces with any part of my body. That's all the chakra exercises I know, he said. Tsunade nodded. That's a very good start, Gaki. Accordingly, most jounin don't train in those techniques quite that extensively. You have pretty good control, probably mid-high jounin. If you want better than that, however, you are going to need specialized chakra control methods because of your enormous reserves, she said, getting a nod from the genin. I think the best way to progress would be to learn how to extend your chakra from your body and control it. The leaf balancing exercise that all academy students do is a very low form of this, same with all chakra control really. However, I'm thinking more along the lines of a small boulder or weights. Instead of keeping it attached to your body, you must learn to keep it at least 5 inches from your body and to resist gravity as well. Understand? She asked. Naruto nodded. So I'll be applying large amounts of chakra and creating a sort of force field around the boulder to hold it afloat. Too much chakra, or too little, and the field will fluctuate and fail, he said. Tsunade nodded and punched the ground, making several different sized boulders for Naruto to use. She smirked. Get to work, Gaki, and no slacking off. Naruto chuckled and approached one of the smaller boulders. This was gonna be fun. Later that week, Training Ground 10. Naruto smiled as his sensei shunshined into the area. After the whole Danzo deal, he had been meaning to tell his team more of his abilities and Ino about his tenant. How she never caught on to her father's prodding about his mental status he never knew. He had honestly liked Yamato from the moment he had met him, he simply hadn't trusted him because he knew of his allegiance to Konoha. Shino, well, of course he trusted his only friend amongst the rookie 9. Ohio-sensei. Naruto said happily. Yamato smiled, Ohio Naruto-kun. I'm happy to see everyone here. I apologize for being unable to teach you this past week, but I'm sure you have all heard of Danzo Shimura's traitorous actions, he said. Getting nods from his 3 students, he continued, most of the Jounin and Umbukor were sent out after him, or on higher missions, for the week before being recalled. But, enough of that, you have all progressed tremendously, and I have decided it's time to learn your elemental affinities and to, hopefully, teach you some jutsu that will aid you in future missions, he said with a smile. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Does that mean we aren't going to be working on elemental manipulation? He asked curiously. Yamato frowned. You may be advanced, but you're not quite that advanced, Naruto. It will simply help you determine your particular jutsus. Shino, I know you can't use very many, because of your hive, so I will try to find some lesser chakra-intensive jutsu when we find out your affinity, he said, answering both students' questions, although Shino's was unanswered. He had to admit, although he didn't want to teach, these kids had grown on him. Naruto nodded. That's fine, sensei. Around 11 o'clock later today, there's going to be an Umbu summoning me to the council chambers. I wish to have you all accompany me, he said, shocking Ino and Yamato. Shino simply nodded. Ino looked at him warily. Why would you want us there? You haven't even tried to be nice to me or sensei since we got assigned teams, she asked/shouted as she had finally had enough of all his secrets. Naruto eyed her. You mean you still haven't figured it out? I knew you were a fangirl, but I thought you had more common sense than this, he said. Yamato decided to keep quiet and find out where he was going with this. Ino gawked at him. Figured out what? That you don't wanna be here? That you hate us, she half screamed at him. Naruto sighed. I never hated you. I simply didn't trust you, still don't. However, you are my team and you need to know more of my abilities if we are to work together, he answered. Ino frowned. Why don't you trust us? What did we ever do? She didn't get to finish as Naruto glared at her with a slight amount of ki, shutting her up. You are here to keep me under control, Ino. Think about it. Sasuke's team is an assault and tracking team. Sakura's team is an ambush and infiltration team. What area would our team be suited for? Your only technique is your mind control. My techniques could make me a one-man army, and Shino can siphon off chakra. Our abilities don't flow together as well as the others. Yamato-sensei can use Mokuton techniques, Shino's bugs can eat your ki, and you are an expert in the human mind, as that is what your clan specializes in. Please tell me you aren't that dense, he said exasperated. Ino was a little taken aback by Naruto's tone and silently thought about it. Suddenly, she shook her head. The only conclusion I can come to is you would be a demon and, like you said, we are here to control you. But, that doesn't make any sense. You may be annoying and rude but you aren't anything like a demon, she said. Hey, she knew he was a jerk but she didn't believe him to be evil. Naruto chuckled. I'm glad you feel that way. I'll explain it to you, if you want, he said with a smirk. After a nod from his female teammate, he sighed. What I'm about to tell you is an S-ranked secret and you can be put to death if you reveal this secret without my, or the Hokage's, approval. Do you understand? He asked. She cocked her head to the side. If it's top secret, why do you know about it and are exempt? She asked. Naruto sighed again. It concerns me, Ino. Do you still wish to know? He asked. She was silent for a moment before nodding again. Good. Now, you know the story of the Kyuubi? That's a lie. The Yondaime Hokage could not kill the Kyuubi, no human can. He, instead, sealed it into a newborn babe, born October 10th. My birthday, he said. Ino looked shocked. She didn't need it spelled out for her. Naruto had the Kyuubi sealed inside his body. She was silent for a good 3 minutes before she looked at Naruto with set eyes. I am sorry. I didn't even realize something was wrong. I just assumed you didn't like us, she said loudly. Naruto chuckled, I'll take that as a, I don't believe you are the Kyuubi. He said smirking. She blushed slightly, that's good. He looked to his sensei, I'm sorry for not trusting you but I'm sure you understand. Yamato simply smiled and nodded. He hadn't liked spying on the boy and Sarutobi had already informed the Jounin of Naruto's affirmation of loyalty to Konoha. Thank you. Now that that's out of the way, I think we should get to work. I'll explain my abilities a bit more at the meeting and, as we get to know each other, you will learn more of my skill set, he said with a smile. Yamato nodded, Ino smiled, and Shino, well, he was happy to see his team come together, if the buzzing coming from him was any indication as to how he felt. Yamato clapped his hands together, okay. Thank you for that, Naruto, I'm glad to see you more trusting. He said. Naruto smiled and nodded, whilst Yamato pulled out 3 slips of paper. Channel your chakra into this. If it burns, you're fire. If it crinkles, you're lightning. If it gets wet, you're water. If it splits in half, you're wind. And, if it crumbles to dust, you're earth. He said as he handed the papers to the genin. Ino smiled and poured chakra into her slip, causing it to become wet. Water, good Ino. Water is a very defensive element and will offset your family techniques nicely. Yamato said. Shino nodded to his sensei and his slip crumbled to dust. Earth, a very versatile element, Shino. Luckily, most earth jutsu are manipulation and don't take as much chakra. Yamato said. Naruto smirked and put chakra into his slip, causing a rather interesting reaction. First, the slip split in 2, but the sides that were split could easily cut a man's finger off as they were so sharp. Second, the right side of the slip crinkled so much it was hardly larger than a pebble. Lastly, the left side of his slip became slightly damp, hell you had to be holding it to tell the difference. Meaning it's a very light affinity to water. Yamato looked surprised, well, a dual affinity for wind and lightning with a slight affinity for water. That is extremely rare. Unfortunately, Naruto, I do not have any lightning or wind jutsu, as I am a water and earth type. Yamato said sadly. Naruto just nodded, that's fine sensei, if you could teach me a few defensive water jutsus then that will be fine. After all, wind and lightning are mostly offensive jutsu. Naruto said, getting a nod from his sensei. That is a very good idea, Naruto. As a matter of fact, I'll teach you an Ino Suten, Sujin Hiki, water style, water wall, while my Kage Bunshin teaches Shino the Doton, Dori Yuriki, earth style, earth wall, so you will all have, at least, a defensive jutsu in your repertoire. Yamato said, gaining smiles from Ino and Naruto, and a nod from Shino. Alright then, let's get to work. Yamato said happily. It would seem his team was beginning to come together. Council room, 10:30 a.m. same day. The clan heads were assembled and awaiting their Hokage and his students. They had asked the Hokage on information regarding one Naruto Uzumaki. It was obvious the boy had some rather interesting techniques, as evidenced by his strange appearance when those root attacked him. They were content to wait, as the Hokage had informed them that Naruto was willing to give a show of his abilities, so they all had their own little niche to hold them over. Shikaka was playing shogi with Inoichi, Chaozu was eating chips, Tsum was quietly conversing with Kuromaru, while Hayashi and Shivi were sitting quietly. The doors opened to reveal the very people they were waiting for. They all stood and bowed to the Hokage as he took his seat, with Jiraiya flanking him and Tsunade taking her clan seat. I am glad to see you all here. I know you have questions about Naruto-kun and I will answer them to the best of my abilities until his appointed test time. Sarutobi said. The clan heads nodded in contentment and Hayashi was the first to stand and voice his concerns. Uzumaki-san has displayed abilities far above his level in the academy. How does he explain this? He asked. Sarutobi frowned. It would seem that he did not feel safe and chose to hide his abilities in fear of being persecuted even more than he already was. He answered with a rather sad tone. Hayashi nodded, content with this answer, while many of the council winced at the obvious affects the previous council had upon a child. Inoichi was the next to stand. Could you give us a brief overview of his abilities? I am especially interested in that strange form he showed when the root attacked him, he said. Sarutobi nodded. It would seem that Naruto-kun is an accomplished seals master. His speed and stealth are easily Umbu level. His Taijutsu is estimated to be high Chunin, while his Genjutsu is rather poor and he can only break out of low Chunin level Genjutsu. He has not, as yet, taken up a weapon, and his thrown weapons are said to be above average. Sarutobi said. Most clan heads nodded while Hayashi stood once again with a slight scowl on his face. While I will not refute his other skills, I highly doubt Uzumaki-san is a seals master. It takes years of work and a true understanding of many theories to claim that status, he stated. Sarutobi sighed, but it was Jiraiya who spoke up. I can honestly say the brat has talent in the area. He showed me a few of the seals he sells and, just off of them, I can tell he's at least my level, a very high probability that he is better. Jiraiya stated, honestly proud of his godson. That threw the council members for a loop. Some stood this time, as the murmuring quieted down. You said the ones he sells? Which might that be, she asked, genuinely curious about her soon-to-be son-in-law. Hell, she saw the way Hana looked at him. Jiraiya smirked, actually, they're rather complex, and one, in particular, has become rather popular amongst the kunoichi. He makes the advanced explosive tag, one-time privacy barrier, and the anti-rape seal. Jiraiya said as he watched the clan heads' jaws dropped. If they had been shocked before, they were breaking the record for lowest jaw drop of the century, well, all except Hayashi and Shivi, who had raised eyebrows, but that was their version of jaw drops anyways. Tsunade whistled, I knew the brat was good, but even I would like one of the anti-rape seals. It's not a save-all, but damn if it hasn't cut down rapes by half, she said. Sarutobi cleared his throat and everyone turned their gazes to him. I have already ordered Nico to bring Naruto, and his team should he wish it, to the training ground behind the Hokage monument at 11. This will be the ideal place to test him as it holds many different areas, including a small river, desert, swamp, and several large boulders. Before we break, however, I wish to know of any clan that stands behind him at this time. Sarutobi said, fishing for support for what he planned to do to the young man. Surprisingly, Shivi Abarame was the first to stand. The Abarames will support Naruto Uzumaki. We understand his burden and wish him no harm from it. My son, Shino, has spoken well of him, and it would be our honor to assist the hero of this village, he stated before sitting back down. Many were surprised but kept quiet. Some barked out a laugh. The Inyazukas stand behind him 100%. He's got our support in anything he does. Pup's always a blast to see around town, she said happily. Tsunade stood, the Senju stand behind him. Even if I am the last, I will support him, she said, knowing of Sarutobi's plan and keeping her relationship with him a secret, for now. Sarutobi looked to the other clan heads, who all agreed to see more of his abilities before endorsing him. Hayashi was the most resistant. I see, thank you, Inyazuka-san, Abarame-san, Tsunade. Now, let us head to the training ground, he said as he disappeared, followed closely by the rest of the council. Training ground 0, 11 a.m. The clan heads arrived just in time to see Team 10 arrive as well. Sarutobi smiled and snapped his fingers, causing 3 Umbu to appear. Naruto-kun. These 3 Umbu are Bear, Nico, and Dragon. Bear is a taijutsu specialist, Nico is a kenjutsu specialist, who will be using 2 different blades I personally chose to test your bloodline, and Dragon is a ninjutsu specialist. While I don't expect you to reveal all of your abilities, I would appreciate an accurate showing of your best skills, he told the genin. Naruto nodded as the group moved off to the side and Bear stood in front of him. I understand, Aji-san. If the council wishes it when the test is over, I can demonstrate a few of my seals, since I know they are curious about them, he asked. Sarutobi nodded, that sounds good. I will be the referee for these matches. You will stop when I say so, or when your opponent is unconscious. Both fighters ready, he asked, getting a nod from the Umbu and genin. He smiled and brought his hand up and then back down yelling, Hajime. Naruto simply stood in his Uriken stance and waited for the Umbu to make a move. He didn't drop his resistance seal, which was currently at level 7, so he was at about low to mid Chunin speed. Bear decided he had waited long enough and quickly went on the offensive at a low Jounin speed. He threw a right punch that Naruto easily dodged to the right and brought his elbow towards the back of Bear's head. Bear wasn't an Umbu for nothing and easily rolled forward before spinning and launching a ferocious flurry of strikes at the whiskered teen. Naruto skillfully evaded or redirected his strikes and even struck back a few times, earning grunts from the Umbu member. This surprised many of the onlookers. It was obvious that the fight could put many Chunin, and quite a few Jounin, to shame. While Naruto didn't hit many times, the experienced shinobi noticed, and pointed out, that Naruto's style was a reactionary style, meaning his hits were decisive and he himself was rarely damaged. When Bear realized he couldn't break the kid's defense, he jumped back, panting slightly. Hokage-sama. I would put him at a high Chunin level. With real experience, easily Jounin. It is obvious he had help with his style, he said as the Hokage nodded in agreement. He turned back to Naruto. That is a dangerous and effective style, Uzumaki-san. I am honored to have fought it, he said. What few knew, was that Bear was an avid follower of many taijutsu styles, knowing almost as many as Mato-gai, although he could not perform them, and to fight a brand new style was a true treat to the taijutsu lover. Naruto smiled and dropped out of his stance before bowing to the Umbu. It was my pleasure. Should you wish for a match, seek me out. I usually hang out around training ground 44, he said, shocking many of the clan heads. Bear nodded and Sarutobi smiled. Good form, you two. Dragon, could you step into the ring next, please? We will test his bloodline last. Sarutobi said, getting a nod from the dragon-masked Umbu. Naruto smirked and said, so would you like the honors or shall I? He asked the masked Umbu. The spectators couldn't see it, but Dragon smirked. He quickly ran through hand seals and roared out Katon, Gukyaku no Jutsu. Fire release, great fireball technique, unleashing a flaming ball of fire at his opponent. Naruto smirked and quickly ran through some seals before announcing his newest jutsu, Suten, Sujin Hiki. Water release, water wall technique, and a wall of water flowed from the nearby river and formed up in front of Naruto. While the full version of this technique went all around the user, Naruto had only accomplished making the water form in front of him for now, pretty good for half a day's work. The two volatile jutsu clashed and a thin steam formed around Naruto. Dragon stared into the steam, attempting to find his opponent when he heard, Raiten, Reikyu. Lightning release, lightning ball, and had to dodge a ball of lightning coming out of the steam. He eyed the ball as it slammed into a tree and burst into a small electrical storm. He turned back to Naruto just in time to see him charging another Reikyu. He quickly ran through some hand seals and roared out Doton, Doriyuki. Earth release, earth wall, just as Naruto threw his second ball forward. The lightning ball slammed into the wall, and nearly tore through it, but Dragon wasn't a ninjutsu specialist for nothing and the wall held. Not wanting to give Naruto another shot, Dragon ran through some more seals and placed his hand on the wall and said, Doton, Doryaso. Earth release, rising earth spears, and several earth kunao sprang from the wall and shot straight for Naruto. Naruto quickly ran through his jutsu repertoire and mentally cursed. He stared at the oncoming kunao and sighed before Kawaramiing out of the way. The kunao impacted a log and Naruto jumped back into the field before looking at the Hokage. Sarutobi noticed and stepped forward. That's enough, Dragon, your assessment please, he said. Bear nodded and relaxed. He is easily Chunin level if he can use elemental jutsu. Using two different ones? I'd place him at Jounin when his jutsu pool expands, he stated. Sarutobi nodded, thank you, Dragon. I concur as well. He looked to Nico and handed her a scroll. Use the first one until it breaks and then the second. It is chakra conductive, he said, as the Umbu nodded to him. The clan heads were quietly conversing, the Inoshikacho trio already having decided to give their support to the blonde. Hayashi was the only one who still refused to do so. His team was impressed, Ino especially, but kept quiet. Naruto stood still as Nico made her way across from him and unsealed both the katanas. She quickly sheathed the secondary blade on her back and took her kenjutsu stance. Sarutobi looked to Naruto, I want you to test your bloodline against these blades, both are of high quality, although only the second is chakra conducting. After that, please give us a description of your bloodline. Sarutobi said, getting a nod from the blonde-haired genin. Naruto smiled at Nico, hey Nico-ne-chan. Come at me with all you got or you won't even get a scratch on me, he said as his body shifted to the form they had seen in the council chambers. His skin had a light silvery grayish tone and he simply stood there staring at Nico. Well, come on, I don't have all day, he said with a smirk. Nico shook her head and charged forward, her blade singing as it split the wind. She quickly made 10 strikes on Naruto's skin, only to jump back and notice he had no wounds and there were cracks in the blade. Everyone watched in amazement as the blade suddenly shattered and dropped to the floor in pieces. Impressive, Nico-ne-chan. Most blades just bend or shatter, for it to crack first speaks immensely of its forging and your skill to make sure the same piece of the blade was not stressed more than once. He said. He had tested out his bloodline against Anko before, not that they knew that. Nico smirked behind her mask as she drew the second katana from its sheath, Impressive bloodline Naruto-san. I'm going to step it up a notch, don't bleed out on me K, she asked with a little sarcasm in her voice. Naruto chuckled and his skin color became a more metallic gray, wouldn't dream of it. Come at me with all you got, he said. You could feel Nico's smile as she dashed forward with chakra in the blade. She stopped in front of him and made the same slashes she had before, the effect was interesting. She could feel the blade grate against his skin, but it did not break the skin, nor did it overly strain the blade. She knew if she hit him enough times, the blade would shatter, but that would take a while. Her affinity was water, so she couldn't channel that into the blade and decided to jump back before nodding to the Hokage and explaining what she felt. Naruto nodded at her explanation and let his bloodline drop. Sarutobi turned to him, waved a hand. Alright then. What Nico-ne-chan said is true. Chakra-enhanced blades are very likely to annoy me, but they will eventually shatter. All regular blades shatter almost instantaneously against my bloodline. However, I do need to pump more chakra into my skin in order to keep chakra blades from affecting me, he said. He didn't want to give away all of his weaknesses, that was just stupid. Hayashi frowned, as if reading his thoughts. Is that all your bloodline can do? And what are its weaknesses? He asked. Naruto scowled. No, that's not all it can do, and why in the nine hells would I give you my weaknesses? Would you tell me of the Byakugan's weaknesses? He asked accusingly. Hayashi's face contorted into rage. How dare you? No one can ask a clan for its secrets. I will. He didn't get to finish. Enough, roared Sarutobi. Naruto has a point, everyone is entitled to some secrets, be happy he allowed us to see what skills he has. He leveled a glare at Hayashi, and you will do nothing to him. He obviously said that to prove a point, and it worked, he said as he noticed the other clans nodding their heads at his wisdom. Hayashi scowled, fine. However, he will never have the Hyuga's support. Despite his abilities, he is a time bomb waiting to happen. One strong emotion and the seal could falter, he stated. Sarutobi glared at him and shook his head. Regardless of your fears, Naruto is a shinobi of this village and he is entitled to his secrets to protect himself. You should consider yourself lucky though, Naruto-kun informed his teammate of his burden today, otherwise the Hyuga would have been forced to find a new clan head, he said. Hayashi simply continued to scowl, but waited to be dismissed. Sarutobi sighed. Naruto-kun, would you still like to give us a demonstration of your seals? He asked. Naruto nodded and said, everyone stand back. I don't want you to get hit by these two, he said, and everyone stood off to the side as he aimed at a tree. His hand became a blur and everyone watched in fascination as a seal took shape in the air. Hado no Yan, Byakurai. Demon Arts number 4, White Lightning. Naruto said as he touched the completed seal. Everyone was amazed to see a white lightning bolt burst forth and slam into the tree, creating a smoking hole in the center. Naruto smirked as he saw everyone's jaw drop. That is my favorite one actually, although I still need to practice writing it so I can use it faster. I have one more I wish to show you, he said, gaining a nod from the still surprised Sandaime. His finger came up again and quickly began writing another seal, this one taking a full 15 seconds longer to make. Hado no Sati Yatsu, Kongo Baku. Demon Arts number 34, Adamantine Blast. Naruto intoned as he touched the seal, and a blast of red, with a black center, emerged from the seal and incinerate the tree that the Byakurai had torn right through. Ino whistled and said, that's impressive, Naruto. There were murmurs of agreement throughout the crowd. Sarutobi smiled, thank you Naruto-kun. Please wait in my office, I should be there shortly. Team 10, you are dismissed, thank you for attending. Council, please return to the chambers, we have one last thing to discuss, he said, and watched as Yamato took his students, minus Naruto, away. The rest of the group soon followed and the aged Hokage sighed before gathering himself. There was one last battle to be fought. Hokage office, noon. Naruto sat in a chair in front of the Hokage's desk as the Sandaime and his students entered. He smiled at them and said, so, did it work? He asked. His answer was a scroll to his face. Sarutobi chuckled as he sat down, like a charm. After that display, only Hayashi refused to ask you to undergo the CRA, although he didn't refute you being the son of Minato. You are going to wait until you are promoted to Chunin until you take his name, correct? He asked. Naruto nodded, I should be strong enough by then. Thanks again Aji-san, I'll see you around, he said before he disappeared in his shunshin. Tsunade shook her head, just as impatient as they were, she said smiling. Sarutobi nodded, so, have you two decided? He asked. The two Sunin looked at one another before nodding. Tsunade smirked softly, I'll do it. Dan and Noeka would love to know I achieved their dream for them, she said with a smile. The two men in the room smiled at her, she would make a great Hokage. Time skip, 2 weeks, Naruto's lab. The girls and Naruto were all assembled by Amaterasu. The first meeting between Hana and Amaterasu had been interesting to say the least. Let's just say that Hana pretty much had to bow to Amaterasu for a week, causing much teasing between Hikari, Anko, and Hana. However, she was now able to control herself and the two had hit it off almost as much as Hikari and Amaterasu had. They didn't know what was going on, but it seemed to be important to their friend. There hadn't been any breakthroughs on Orochimaru, so this had to do with something other than that. When she walked into the small living room and sat down at the table, they could see she was tense. What's wrong, Ami-chan? Hikari asked. She sighed, I have a confession to make. I didn't come here just to search for Orochimaru. Kami ordered me to find someone who could become the champion of the Camus, the chosen of Anjuin, one, she said. Everyone looked bewildered, except Hikari, who looked stunned. You're looking for someone to be charged with a quest from all the Camus? That hasn't happened since the advent of mankind, she yelled. Amaterasu nodded, I know, but don't worry about that. I called you here because I informed them of my choice 3 weeks ago and today my choice has been chosen to take the immortality trials, she said. Hikari paled at that. No one has passed those trials since Ryujin. Who is your? She didn't get to finish as they all felt a pull from another plane. Same time, Kami's court. The group of people all arrived and immediately dropped into fighting stances while Hikari paled again. Kami stood, her long white hair trailing down her back. Welcome to my court, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, chosen of the Anjuin, she said. Naruto stood still. Well, that explained who Amaterasu's choice was.